what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live! Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listens to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at Fox News Radio, the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams bringing you the Scott Adams Show, weekdays from 9 a.m. until noon. We've got a brand new program called Kinetic Faith, featuring Rick Crump, preaching values, service, and order, weekdays at 11 a.m. We've got the one, the only, Dan the Man Bongino, coming at you weekdays from noon right until Ben Shapiro. We've got Ben Shapiro bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we want to welcome him to the Freedom Station. We've got Michael Knowles bringing you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays at 5 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ!
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We've got a very special edition of the Mike G in the Morning program today. We've got a special guest, Chris Ruggiero, who's going to be joining us here live in person. But before we do that, we've got a lot of gun news swirling around this week. And we figured who better to discuss than Dr. Val Finnell and the other half of the Justice Brothers, attorney Richard Sherwood Roberts, Jr. Thank you both for joining us today.
Hey, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
So let's start off with you, Dr. Val. I understand you've got some pretty big news regarding constitutional carry, don't you?
Oh, yeah, we have fabulous news. So the Pennsylvania Senate passed constitutional carry late in the evening on Tuesday on a vote of 29 to 21. Largely a partisan line vote. All Republicans voted for it, and one Democrat, Senator Jim Brewster in the Pittsburgh area, is our sort of our last pro-gun Democrat in the state. So that bill, along with the bill to strengthen our firearms preemption law, is on its way to the House. They both ended up in the House Judiciary Committee, and yesterday the House Judiciary Committee reported, which means they voted on it and sent it to the floor. They already sent constitutional carry to the floor. So we are looking at yet another historic vote next week, Monday and Tuesday, in the House. Wow. To pass constitutional carry.
Here's where we find out who our friends are. Isn't that so, Dr. Val?
Yes, exactly. That's what we're going to do. And the Senate looks like I said, all the Republicans voted for it. And we're going to see how it shapes up in the House, because in the past, we have heard excuses such as, we don't have enough votes to pass it. Well, that's not looking like that it was quite true.
Sure.
When you have all the Republicans and even Democrats voting for it. And we may even get a few more Democrats in the House side to vote for it. So this is historic. And of course, Governor Tyrant Tom will veto it because it's such a dangerous thing. to allow people to exercise their constitutional rights, because criminals in Philadelphia just love waiting in line for 45 days or a year to apply for their LTCF before they go out to care.
No, what you don't understand, Dr. Val, is that the criminals are sitting there. They're following this legislation very closely, and they're just hoping that it passes so that they can then carry under constitutional carry. They're waiting for it. They're not illegally carrying in the first place. They're waiting for this to go through. They're sitting there with their Gun Owners of America hats on, saying, "Yeah, push it through," right?
Right. Exactly.
They wouldn't do it right now because that would be against the law.
Right. And but if you listen to the testimony and about 2 to 3 hours worth of Philadelphia Democrats and Pittsburgh Democrats trying to slap every type of anti-gun amendment onto those two bills, yeah, that's exactly what they were implying, that it would make things more dangerous. So we need universal background checks. So we need to put this amendment on for red flag gun confiscation orders. We need to put this amendment on for lost or stolen firearms to be reported within 24 hours. And, we need to amend it again so that membership organizations don't have a right to sue cities on the preemption law. It was just one anti-gun amendment after another, and they're geared up to do the same thing next week in the House, of course. And you know what? We love these recorded votes because everybody can see where largely, with the exception of one person in the Senate, where the Democrats really stand on your constitutional rights. And I tried to reassure the Republicans who voted for this is that, look, I mean, there aren't too many people from Ceasefire PA that are going to vote for you. Your base are our folks, Gun Owners of America, like people in the NRA, people at the Second Amendment Foundation or FPC, you name it. That is your base. These are the people, that we are the ones that are put you into office. It isn't the folks on the other side, and stop being afraid of them and worrying about what they're going to say all the time, because whether you do something or not, they're going to attack you anyway. Right. So, and I think they finally got the message. That's the good news. And, it just goes to show you, it's like Senator Everett Dirksen said, when I feel the heat, I see the light. And in previous years, this bill was filed and they kind of just sat on it and never did anything. But what was different this session was the actions of GOA members and supporters. We were very aggressive, thousands upon thousands of messages into the Capitol. We even had a gun owners lobby day on September 20th where people met face to face with their senator to get these bills moving. So
now
I'm
we have
looking forward to a good week.
Get everybody to contact their representatives. Is that so?
Yep.
Get out there and keep the pressure on them. Keep the pressure on them. Rich, any comments on constitutional carry?
No, I think it's a good step forward. I think it's going to face a lot of headwind. I have no doubt the governor's going to veto the bill, and that's going to be the end of it. I don't think if you have any hope for it, you're going to have to wait till 2022 and see who is elected governor at that point to really see it get passed. I don't know. I didn't hear much out. Usually in these situations, Dr. Val would certainly know better than me, a lot of law enforcement organizations come out against constitutional carry. It's one of their big fears. And I didn't really read or hear too much. I'm sure Dr. Val he was in the trenches fighting for it. Yep. But law enforcement organizations, by and large, are big against it. And so the base that he talks about for these Republican lawmakers are kind of pulled in two different directions, because obviously law enforcement's a big constituency for our Republican brothers and sisters. But, they get pulled by the other members, the Gun Owners America, NRA, members of Law Shield, pulled in the other direction. So they kind of get stuck.
That's true, Dr.
Yeah,
Val.
I think they said. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to ask you, have you had to deal with that?
Well, yeah. So we like the District Attorneys Association was against it. Allegheny County Sheriff's Association was against it. The FOP was neutral. And so these things came up on the floor. And sometimes I meet in senators' offices, and I was asked, well, what about the other stakeholders? What does the District Attorneys Association say about this? And I was in Senator Vogel's office, and that was brought up by one of his staffers. And I looked at a staffer and I said, how many counties does Senator Vogel represent? And well, two, it's like Lawrence and Butler County. So how many district attorneys are in those two counties? Well, two, right? I bet you I have a lot more members than 2.
That's a very good point.
So that's how we look at it. Is like, the stakeholders that our elected officials need to worry about are their constituents, and so everything that we do is constituent driven. So we mobilize, and we confront. And our message is really simple. It says this is our expectation. We're not an access-based lobby group where we go in there and we try to get politicians to like us. We say this is what we want, and we expect you to do it, and we hold you to it, and we turn up the heat. And we finally got it through. And it's okay if the governor vetoes it, because we're going to give Governor Tom Wolf and his appointed heir, Josh Shapiro, full credit for vetoing constitutional carry. We're going to say, look,
there you go.
Right.
This is exactly what they did. Rich, I got a question for you. Any speculation as to why any sheriff's offices might oppose something like this? Because these are not law enforcement officers who are dealing with traffic stops, let's say, are they?
I don't know why a sheriff's office would oppose it, considering their law enforcement duties in the state are basically transportation and courthouse security. Most law enforcement are the
is
beat
there
cop.
another thing that they have to do, Richard?
What? Oh, well, they have to process the application.
Right.
But,
right. They're going to be out of the job.
I don't know about that.
No more $20, right?
To be honest with you, we don't get any pushback from the sheriffs. The ones I've talked to, the ones we supported for re-election in Pennsylvania, were in favor of constitutional carry.
I just spoke to a couple out of Western Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago. Same thing. They were right on board with it. They thought it was a good idea. But it was the association, you said, who opposed it?
Allegheny County Chiefs of Police Association.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes,
yeah, usually, in my experience, it's law enforcement. Cops want some kind of check on who's carrying a firearm. I don't know why it's necessary. Obviously, I agree with Dr. Val on his constitutional rights, but that's usually the pushback that I hear from police departments, police associations.
Right, and so we presented evidence, and basically it's we have 21 states. We have experience in those states. And some of the safest states in America are constitutional carry states.
New Hampshire.
So and one argument that is often brought up is, so what if a police officer pulls someone over in the car? They don't know if they're armed or not. And the response to that is they should be treating every traffic stop the same. They should be assuming everyone's armed when they pull them over.
Right. So I want to switch gears.
I'm going to agree with Dr. Val on that one. I think problems. Everybody's arms, from the defense attorney perspective, that worries me.
Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying is that
they should be prepared, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I got your back 100%. Anything the District Attorneys Association is against, I'm definitely for. I don't care what it is.
Right, exactly. And that's what I said to them. I said, well, they have anti-gun positions. And then I tell them the numbers. I said 2 compared to probably a couple thousand people or more in your district that we have.
You can say the whole state, there's 67 of them.
That's right. There's 67. Compared, we got quite a few more than 67 statewide. So, we're a grassroots organization, and what we do is we tell our elected officials what their constituents want. That's our job. And but that's the argument. The chiefs of police say it's all these political organizations. It's not your rank and file cops.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Now, Rich, I want to shift gears here. I've been blown up all week, as I'm sure you have as well. Regarding this Kyle Rittnehouse case, the comments as we speak are blowing up. We're talking constitutional carry over here. Everybody's Rittenhouse. Do you have any thoughts coming out of it? I know that you probably haven't sat there and watched the entire trial. I wish I had the opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, you and I spent a lot of our day working on our own cases, trying to defend other people who have had to defend themselves or their loved ones. Has anything popped up that stands out to you right away?
Well, I think I like the judge, not because he's well, quote unquote pro Rittenhouse, but looking at some of the comments from the local defense attorneys, they find that's the guy that you want to be in front of. He's more favorable to defendants than any other judge in that particular courthouse. So that's a good thing. I like when a judge takes a prosecutor to task. I hate it when I see a judge looking like the second prosecutor in the case. And I think
we see that very often. Be clear, we see that fairly often.
Mike, you may be involved in a case where you run into some judges, and I've definitely been involved in cases where it seems like the judge, I go, wait, there's a guy, you're not supposed to be there. One of our judges in Norfolk County, Judge Evans, says, listen, and John Roberts said, I'm just calling balls and strikes. And that's literally what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to have a position one way or the other. That's what I look for in a judge, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So it's good to have somebody who's going to take that fair and neutral position. You get a lot of former prosecutors who end up becoming judges, don't they, Rich?
I do. And I think one of the frustrating things that I see in judicial elections and even in judicial appointments at the federal level, former President Trump wanted to nominate a particular individual. I can't remember the young lady's name, to an appellate bench position. I think it might have been the Seventh Circuit. And there was a large outcry because she was a public defender, at which point I went nuts because I go, I don't understand the problem. But the prosecutor's office is typically a springboard to the bench, which is unfortunate, especially if some of them and some of the judges, and I don't cast aspersions on all of them, try to keep that prosecutor's robe or prosecutor background in their back pocket. But when you become a judge, your job isn't to favor one side or the other, is to judge the case on the law. And I think one of the things that we noticed is everybody, got standing up and applauding when he took the prosecutor to task, and that's what he's supposed to do. I was like, if a defense attorney or a prosecutor tried to bring in or bring up evidence through a back door that the judge says you couldn't bring in, I don't care if you're prosecutor, defense attorney, law clerk, whoever, that judge needs to scold you. And because there's one thing, like, I don't understand if you disagree with the judge's ruling and that evidence should come in. That's what an appellate court's for. You're stuck with that ruling. You don't even come close to that evidence when they say it comes out. And besides that, I think the biggest frustration I had, and I have an experience with this, a case I did in Center County, the commentary by the prosecutor on Rittenhouse's not talking and remaining silent after the incident is evidence of his guilt. When I heard or saw the clip later on, I'm glad I own my computer because I would have thrown something through my computer. Because I had that happen in Center County. I was trying a case, and the prosecutor, and it was a young prosecutor at the time, did the same exact thing on more than one occasion, and I objected 3 or 4 times, and then the judge at that point, but although I don't know if I agree with it, he did it in front of the jury. He goes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm sorry, but apparently the prosecutor in this case doesn't get that every single person in this country has a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. The fact she remains silent is not allowed to be used against you, but apparently she missed that class in law school, so she keeps trying to do this. And I'm telling you that him remaining silent, that defendant, is not evidence against him. He has every right to do that. If he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't have to. And I've never seen that in my career. Well, are they going to use it as
evidence for them if they do talk? Right?
Well, absolutely can. If they talk, you get to use it. But if they don't, you can't use it against them.
I did.
No, what I'm saying is, could we go out there and say, well, he talked, so he's obviously innocent? Is that
right? Yeah, right. There you go. It goes both ways, right?
It does it go both ways? So,
well, no, it doesn't, because I've had guys say, I didn't do it. And I said, he told you you didn't do it.
What are we here for, right? Oh, you didn't do it. Why didn't you say so? Case closed. Right. Everybody go home.
Well, what was that thing
I have my U.S. Law Shield book from Mike G. And he signed the front inside the book. He signed lawyer up and shut up.
Absolutely. I was just dealing with an emergency call before we got on the air, and I apologize to everybody that we got on here a few minutes late, but I was dealing with an emergency call where this guy was on the side of the road, had just had a defensive incident, and I told him, when the police come, you're not going to say anything. So the police walk over to his window and start asking him questions, and he starts answering the questions, and I'm yelling through the phone. Everybody in the office over here thinks I'm going nuts. I'm having a heart attack or something. I'm saying, oh, whoa, shut up. And fortunately, the gentleman was allowed on his way after I had a discussion with the officer. But we can't emphasize that enough. Do not make any statements. They tell us from the time that we're very, very young. We hear these on television, the Miranda warnings. Anything you say can and will be used against you. They're telling you we want you to say something out loud that we can use against you in the court of law to put you in jail for a very long time. And for whatever reason, otherwise intelligent human beings say, sure, yeah, I'll help you out. It makes no sense.
It can't possibly help you to talk to the police.
It's very difficult to reverse engineer some kind of a scenario where that would be true.
Right.
It's
Right.
100%. And it's always the strategy, lawyer up and shut up. Now, Rich, I think we're also learning a whole lot because a lot of people see this Rittenhouse case and they say, well, if this isn't self-defense, then there's no such thing as self-defense in this country. If you look at the affidavit of probable cause, if you look at that criminal complaint, these are the charging documents that are being used to prosecute this young man. And based upon their story, the story that the prosecution, the government is telling to try to put him in jail for possibly the rest of his life, if you look at Rosenbaum throwing something at him, right, and then chasing him, and Rittenhouse trying to get away, and Rosenbaum continuing to chase him, and then chasing him across the entire parking lot, and then Rittenhouse being backed into a corner where he can't go anywhere because he's backed up to a car. And then Rosenbaum ultimately reaching for the firearm. One of the witnesses said that he yelled some kind of curse words at him while he reached for the firearm. And then Rittenhouse at that point shoots Rosenbaum. He runs away, ultimately attacked by 3 more people, chased, tangled to the ground. One man comes over, runs at him, tries to kick him in the head. He shoots at him and misses. Another guy comes on over, slams him in the face with a skateboard, shoots at him and kills him. And then another third guy with a gun comes on over, points a pistol at him. Rittenhouse shoots him and ultimately blows his arm up. Is that a fair assessment of the facts as depicted in the affidavit of probable cause, Rich? Did I miss anything there?
No, that's what they put in the affidavit of probable cause.
So if that's what they're claiming, so we're going to presume that everything they say is true, right? Not even getting into what are the minor details that they're missing, things like that. People see something like that and they say, if this isn't self-defense, then there's no such thing as self-defense in this country. And I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. First of all, there are no winners in these cases, are they? Even if you're involved in a situation where you think this is open and shut, I did nothing wrong, if I didn't do this, then I would have been killed or encountered serious bodily injury, something permanent, some kind of protracted loss of a use of a limb or an organ, serious bodily injury under the law. I've defended myself, and now I'm tangled up in the legal system. I think a lot of people don't realize that that's true. Do you agree, Rich?
Well, yes, I say in plenty of times, it's not a preclusion from being charged, it's defense at trial. He's defending himself at trial. And then the jury ultimately is going to make a decision whether or not he was acting in self-defense. So his fate's really in the hands of those 12 people listening to the testimony and hearing the witnesses and judging, and they're going to weigh and judge all the evidence. It's a tough place to be in. It's really tough.
I think it's really easy also for us as gun owners, as advocates for self-defense, to sort of stay inside this little cave, so to speak, with other people who are like-minded. And we fail to recognize that there are people on Twitter making comments, things of this nature. I've got one right here. It says, that's the guy who shot 3 people, and he had an illegal firearm in a state he didn't live in. He killed 2 people in a place he had no business being with a weapon that wasn't legal. If he's not a trained policeman or a National Guardsman in the state of Wisconsin, he had 0 business being there with an AR-15 rifle, 0. So people listen to that and they say, this guy's totally missing the point. He's missing the fact that even if you're in unlawful possession of a firearm, that does not mean you have to let somebody else kill you. You still have a right to defend your life in these situations. But what they don't realize is they just write off somebody like that as a knucklehead, as some kind of a nut job, as a moron, and they don't realize that those kinds of people could end up on the jury that are deciding your fate for the rest of your life. Isn't that true, Rich?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They fail to recognize that these people are out there who have these misconceptions. They haven't been educated. They haven't gone to gun law seminars. They're not members of Gun Owners of America. They're not members of U.S. Law Shield. And ultimately, they make these decisions. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people who are a part of the law-abiding gun-owning community sort of lose sight of that and don't realize that there's this dramatic reality. And it's not necessarily correct, it's not necessarily right, but it's reality. And we could end up in these situations where you have to defend your life, and go through the legal system, and you really don't feel like a winner at the end. Nobody wins in these situations. The best gunfight is the one that don't happen. Agreed, Rich?
I agree completely with that. I do.
Anything else about the case in and of itself? Because I know we were talking about maybe what he did in being there in the first place could have been avoided. And a lot of people are speculating about that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, but that's not what he's on trial for. Should he have went down there? Probably not. Is that the smartest decision? Probably not. I'm sure while he's sitting there next to his defense attorney, staring at 12 people are going to decide whether or not he's ever going to see the light of day again. He's going, maybe I should have stayed home. Going back to your point about, best gunfight's the one you don't get in there. It doesn't make a difference as to whether or not it's self-defense. I mean, ultimately, the facts in the affidavit match somewhat to the testimony as I understand it. The guy there's a spectacular moment where the victim who had his hand blown up said that Rittenhouse didn't fire his weapon until he pointed his firearm at him. The first two, Rosenbaum, I think, is a tough case. I mean, if the jury believes that Rosenbaum was going for the firearm, that's certainly self-defense, but
That's the testimony of the eyewitness they brought up there, right? He said he lunged at him to grab the firearm.
Said he never got to the firearm. So, I mean, that's going to be... I think there was an objection by the prosecutor on that one because I don't think he ever actually got to the firearm. I'm not sure.
Well, what do you say? I'll go right ahead, sir. You can, all yours, sir.
I tell you, these are judgment calls that the jury's going to be talking about in that jury room.
Sure.
Right?
So I'll tell you this, though. Did you see him on the stand?
Yes, I did. I watched some of his testimony.
He absolutely had what looks to me like a panic attack, hysterical crying. What did you think of that?
Well, it's emotional to be up there. I mean, I wouldn't want to be up there telling that story. You got to tell the world about what you did and basically why you did it. It's a tough situation to be in.
Some people have come on out and said they think he faked that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I saw that. That's ridiculous.
Some people have been saying that he was faking that. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it'd be tough to fake something like that. I don't think he's a professional actor.
That's what I was thinking because it's just so wild, right? That if you look at it as it's taking place, that would be a pretty wild fake. But people are always going to speculate, regardless. People are absolutely going to speculate as to whether it's genuine. I will say this. Though I believe it is genuine, I think we can agree that it is a far cry from him hanging out in the bar with a free as F curse t-shirt on, right?
Right.
That's a far cry. That is a far cry from, and I know that maybe he wasn't putting these out there, but the memes with him saying F around and find out. I think now things get real. You're on trial, and hopefully this serves as a lesson to everybody else who's watching as a law-abiding gun owner, that this isn't a joke and it's not a game. That you end up in this situation fighting for your life after you've already fought for your life, right?
Right. Yeah.
We'll do more on this stuff throughout the week. We've got a special guest who's in-house over here. I want to thank both Rich and Dr. Val for stopping by. Dr. Val, any parting words?
No, I just wanted to share the good news with everybody. Look for a vote next week on constitutional carry. We'll keep you informed. And if you want to join GOA, go to gunowners.org/join. We need everybody involved for next year. We need a new governor in Pennsylvania. We need you on board.
Amen. Rich, any parting words?
No, great to have me on again. It's a couple weeks in a row. Love to come back after we hear the verdict. It's tough. We're about 3, but I'm sure you and I will both be getting. I get my Twitter and instant message and text messages every day. And I got to go say the same thing. I'm not sitting there watching. I got a job, right?
We got to create right. We got to create a Justice Brothers Twitter, though. Maybe that would be fun.
We could definitely do a Justice Brothers Twitter. We got to set that up.
Done. All right, gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. I've had it with you both. Get out of here.
All right. Thanks for having us on. Bye.
All right. Take care. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. We've got a very special guest with us on location. He's been kind enough and gracious enough to have us here in his building. I don't know what he was thinking having us over here. Maybe he's having second thoughts at this point.
He's about to kick us out, I think.
He's about to kick us
Yeah,
out if
like,
he
get out
hasn't
of here.
already.
What's going on here?
Maybe the police are already on their way. He's underneath the table with his cell phone. He's got the secret button under the table,
That's
right?
right. Don't make any statements, Mike.
We've got Chris Ruggiero with us. He has been voted one of the Philadelphia area's top money managers. Top money guys, financial manager,
Wealth manager.
wealth manager, one of the top wealth managers in the greater Philadelphia area for several years in a row. He's just the guy to talk to when it comes to numbers, when it comes to finances. He's out of the greater Philadelphia area. It's been my pleasure to know him for the last few years and finally got him to come on the program. He's got so much information. It's such a bright gentleman, and I'm glad that he's here. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me.
Why don't you pull your seat in just a little bit over there? Really eat that microphone. We want to make sure that everybody gets all of this. Everybody gets all this radio gold in their ears.
There we go.
For today. So, Chris, how long have you been in wealth management?
I've been practicing for about 25 years, 27 years.
27 years.
Yeah.
And how did you get into it?
It's my father's a wealth manager, and it just kind of trickles down through the family.
Really?
Yeah.
And is it something that you were interested in as a child, or is it something that you saw your dad doing it and you wanted to be like Dad, or is it something that you independently said, hey, this is something that I enjoy, and I ought to do something like this?
Actually, when I got to school, got to college, it just came to me very, very easy. I didn't really have to put a lot of effort, if you will, into understanding what was happening. So,
did you grow up in Pennsylvania?
yep, I lived in Pennsylvania since I was 13, so long enough.
Where before there?
Just north of Wilmington.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
So Delaware Valley boy.
Delaware Valley boy.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in the area?
Well, it was different in the sense that it wasn't as congested as it is today. But in this area, over the past probably 15, 20 years, it's just gotten really, really crowded.
In northern Chester County?
Northern Chester County, yeah.
Has changed a lot.
Yeah, it really has. And it's kind of sad to see. I kind of like that open space, but progress, I guess that's what we call it, right?
And there still is some open space to a degree in northern Chester County. If you come from a place like Brooklyn, like myself, when I moved out this way, I told everybody at home I moved to the country. I live in the country out here. And then I had a client who grew up in Glenmore area, and he said that place went downhill once they built that Lexus dealership. And me coming on in, it's like, hold on, we're in the country over here. I've never known this place without the Lexus dealership, right?
That's relatively new, though. It's only about 10, 15 years old. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more open space, I guess. It's all relative to where you're coming from, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Concrete city versus a little bit of farms here and there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So where did you go to college?
Westchester.
Okay, so
Right
stayed
down the
nice
street.
and
Yeah,
local.
Very local, yes.
If you really enjoy the area, there's really no reason to leave, right?
No, absolutely not, yeah. Other than the congestion that's kind of creeping in. I keep moving further and further north and then west, and then who knows where I'll end up.
Have you had to do work in the city for your line of work?
Yeah, I started my career in the city, and essentially I moved out to the suburbs after a 2-hour commute each way. It kind of grinds on you after a bit. So after about 2 years, I moved out to the suburbs. I go into the city once every other week or so and meet with people. Yeah.
So what kind of person are you generally representing, or what kind of business? Who are the people you're interacting with on a regular basis?
Typically small business owners and their individual work and their kids. We get to see them work through. But it's all kinds of businesses, professional services, retail businesses.
So you're interacting with the people themselves, not these big corporations where you got to go to somebody to get to somebody to get to somebody.
Nah.
You're seeing people who their livelihood is on the line, essentially, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So do you think that gives you a little bit of the opportunity to have your thumb on the pulse of society, the average hardworking American?
Yeah, we get to really see how everything is affected. when something happens, whether it's down in Washington or even just kind of locally, we can really see the impact at the front line and how that kind of trickles down, not only to the business owner, but the people that work for them, because we're so close to the situation.
For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So I want to talk turkey here a little bit, Chris, because a lot of our listeners are watching what's going on in this country and the things that are happening during this administration, and they're very, very concerned about the financial future of this country, the economic future of this country, and how long something like this could possibly last. What do you think about where we are today economically?
Well, right now, the financial markets seem to be moving in a positive direction. The question is how long is that really going to be able to sustain itself?
Right.
At some point, things have to give. A couple months ago, I was looking at some numbers, and it kind of painted a picture of maybe 18 months or so that I was kind of evaluating, is that really when this is going to happen? I have some concerns that some things that have really kind of happened over those past few months. You're looking at supply chain as we approach the holiday seasons that really could have a rather large impact come January or February of next year. For example, you have ships, if you will, that are off in the Pacific trying to get into the country and their goods. But if you have these small businesses that are waiting to sell those goods, they don't have the goods to sell. So what happens to them? Come their holiday season, they usually make a lot of their money during that 1 month period, Thanksgiving to Christmas.
Right.
They don't make the money because the product isn't here to sell. So what happens to them in January and February? And then the impact through, whether it's their employees, if you will. So that's a real concern. I see that really on the horizon.
That's a good point, and I don't think a lot of people think about that, where if you miss the boat, so to speak, right? Then it's not like somebody is going to come back in a few months and buy Christmas presents. The season's over. They've missed that opportunity. They're not getting that money ever.
No, they're not. It's a fire sale essentially, and that can even trickle back to now the suppliers, because a lot of time this stuff is bought on credit with the anticipation of paying that credit off in January or February. They don't have the money to do it, so then that trickles back to the people that are holding the debt, if you will. So
why do we think that the markets are moving in a positive direction? I know that we just saw this infrastructure bill come down. Do you think people are seeing that, these other businesses saying there's going to be a lot of money up for grabs here, and this is a good thing for us to make some money, and that's why that's happening?
Yeah, I think that that's the positive aspect of some of this stuff that's going on. If we just isolate just the infrastructure part of it, I think that's very positive. Obviously, there's a lot of things around that that really don't make a lot of sense, that could actually kind of create more of a problem down the road. But I think when we isolate just the infrastructure portion of it, I think that does create positives in the economy, temporary as they may be.
So what do you think that people need to look out for in the next few months?
Well, I mean, we just got a big CPI number that just kind of came through, which really kind of starts to reflect that inflationary pressures that we're all already feeling. And for many of us, we've been feeling it for quite some time. I have a sense that that's probably going to get worse before it gets better. Our energy costs are really kind of going through the roof. I'm not sure what kind of winter we're going to have that's going to cause even more problems. And all of that is that's cash flow essentially that goes right out the door. There's not really a return on it for the individual, if you will. So I think we have to watch that type of stuff, at least in the short term, I think. But that's going to permeate, essentially for the next several months.
And did they not say that inflation was up about 6%? Is that what they said?
They just reported out on that.
Yeah. It was huge.
Historic highs,
So what does that mean for the average American? That their dollar's not worth as much as it was?
Well, it's a declining dollar. Essentially, you're buying, what your dollar buys less goods than it did a year ago, and that's scary. That's because we all our wages aren't increasing at the same rate.
Right.
You know, so it's we all buy the same gallon of milk, and that gallon of milk is now costing more essentially.
Yeah, so even though the market's going up, it's not really going up at the same rate as it has historically in the past due to that inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we see things like gas that are also very expensive right now, right?
Yeah, that's a big problem because it's not just gas; it's the price of oil. And if you look at the price of oil, that feeds into our ability to heat our homes and things like that. So it's not only what we're feeling at the pump, but it's also how that's kind of trickling through. If we have a harsh winter, where you have a situation where you can't heat your house for the same dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was evaluating that for myself the other day, and it looks like mine's going to quadruple. You know,
quadruple?
Yeah, to be able to heat my house.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
From last year, if
Yeah.
I was looking at it last year.
Hyperinflation, right?
Yeah, it's kind of scary. And it's a shame because some of that could have been really headed off. I kind of look back when I was looking back working over why is this going to quadruple, my own home heating. When Biden first came into office, the Keystone Pipeline, he kind of cut it right away.
Right.
And it's like, well, what are you doing? That doesn't really make any sense. While we weren't necessarily going to get a lot of our oil or what have you right away from that, it still sent a message, and as a result, OPEC had already cut production, so are they going to increase production to help offset?
Thanks, Jeremy.
It seemed to be not necessarily a smart move, which is causing.
I think there's talk of him closing another pipeline too. I just saw in the news. There's another pipeline there.
Yeah, I had heard that. I heard that as well. So
right.
it's just more and more.
Yeah, it's compounding.
Yeah,
it's compounding.
Yeah. And it doesn't make any sense.
Right,
Right.
right.
Whereas if you look at the previous administration, we had a situation where he was opening this stuff up.
Sure.
And we got to a point for the first time in decades where we were actually producing more, which was really good.
Right.
Almost self-sufficient in that respect.
It certainly felt good for the average consumer at the gas pumps at the time.
Oh my
right?
gosh! Yeah.
Compared
it
to
was
now.
Great. Yeah.
So one thing that they always bring up is that we only care about these gas prices because we're these selfish Americans who drive these big cars and we pollute the environment and everything. And I remember at one point, Obama came out and said something along the lines of, well, just check the pressure on your tires and that'll do the trick because you get better gas mileage if you check the tire pressure. And I'll never forget my dad saying, hey, knucklehead, I don't have tires on my house. I got to heat my house.
Yeah.
So that's not going to do you very good, is it? Why don't these politicians think through these things before they say them? Is it that they don't know or that they don't care?
I think they're just kind of saying what sounds good, and it's unfortunate because they're not looking through the full scope. They're not looking at really what the effects are. I think they're just trying to get an immediate reaction to appease a certain sector of the population, and ultimately that's the idea is to get them reelected. I mean, that's ultimately the goal. But I think they don't think the process all the way through. And that's unfortunate because it affects so many other people in different ways. Almost kind of like they're just, let's just put a Band-Aid here and kick the rest of the can down the road. Let it be somebody else's issue.
Gigi brings up a good comment, too, here. There's some comments here, Chris, about the kind of the Green New Deal stuff and electric vehicles. So, it's interesting how they're doing that because then they could steer the dollars toward, the solar and the wind farms and things of that nature, which really only become cost effective, I think, when the oil prices are this high.
That's exactly right because it's very expensive to put in that type of solar type of stuff, and by the price fuel being higher, people start looking at it going, hey, well, wait a minute here. Does this make sense to put in solar at this time?
Right.
I
could actually save a few bucks,
right?
Yeah.
Whereas they wouldn't have thought about that 2 years ago.
No, right. Exactly.
Yeah, those Teslas are looking a lot better now.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I had done some research quite a bit ago, and it seems that the American, generally speaking, $4 seems to be a kind of our threshold. When it starts getting to that $4 mark, we all starting to change our habits.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, it is, and I think
That's a
we're
lot, yeah.
approaching that now. I think we're 3.5 gallons is the average,
Yeah.
unless you're in New York or California. And
Yeah,
it's-
California's
I think
like
it's
$6.
over
Yeah.
Right.
This is ridiculous.
Right.
Just ridiculous. And we see a lot of other things more expensive. I know that lumber was a thing for a long time.
Sure.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Right.
yeah, that was horrible. I think it was peaking at $1,200 or $1,600 a board foot.
Yeah,
That's kind of
crazy.
pulled back a bit, which
Yeah.
is good. I was going to actually redo the deck this summer, and that wasn't going to happen because it
Right.
was just the price of lumber was through the roof.
Just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Not cost effective to do it.
No.
And all the plywood, they needed to board all the stores up. That drove up the plywood prices.
Yeah,
you
right,
know,
right, yeah.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah.
point. You
Yeah.
know, I was in California during around the time of the last election. You walk through Beverly Hills, every single store boarded up from floor to ceiling before
Yeah.
the election.
Wow.
Absolutely, the entire town.
Yeah, I saw
And-
them doing it in Philly. It's crazy.
And that day when they came out, the press announced that they declared Biden the victor
Yeah.
of the election. I went out for a walk, and there were people in the streets doing their thing. And, I'm walking around, nobody's causing any trouble or anything. And I saw the security guard in California, mind you, he's out there. So I said, why do they have these,
Is that an emergency call? All right, gonna grab it. And take over. What are your thoughts on the cryptos at all? Do you have any thoughts on the cryptocurrencies, Chris? What's going on with in that market? I don't know how much you follow that, but Mike had to take an emergency call, so the U.S. Law Shield ring does ring at any time, folks. So,
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. The cryptos are. I don't understand a lot of it underneath. Where's the money coming from, if you will, or how is it being sustained? I understand at least the concept of the dollar that you and I are willing to do something in exchange for that dollar,
Right.
And then we'll use it for something else. I guess the concept's the same, but I don't understand how it's backed up.
Yeah, yeah.
It almost kind of gives the impression of a. And I think this is initially how they were looking at it, as almost kind of a money laundering type of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I have some concerns
this,
about it. Yeah.
I think this infrastructure bill that they just passed put some limits as far as reporting requirements on that cryptocurrency.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
Previously to that, there was nothing, and it was really basically, just kind of go out there, trade it as much as you want,
Right.
and it was almost an honor system.
Yeah.
But I think this new infrastructure bill puts something on there. Now I don't know what that's going to do to all of a sudden, there's going to be real gains that are going to be reported somewhere.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And there's been some fraud, too. I saw recently there was one of the cryptos that was linked. I forget which one it was, but they just pulled the rug right out.
Yeah.
Pulled everything out. So, there's not as much regulation there, but
So
some
what does
people
that
have made
mean to
money,
somebody that really gets into it?
Right, exactly. Sure. What do you think with the potential downturn in the market coming? Obviously, we can't predict the future, but with how high it is right now and all the quantitative easing, the printing of money and inflation, what do you think some of the safe havens might be for folks? What are you advising your clients to do? Do you talk at all about like hard metals, like silver and gold or anything, or just getting out of the actual stocks or riskier investments? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean it's a more of a shore up type of a position, not necessarily. Gold is it always has a sustainable value in some capacity,
Right.
But usually you can get some more sophisticated investments, like what are called put options, essentially are protecting your investment losses. So we'd be more inclined to do something along those lines.
Kind of limit that has some limits to it.
Yeah. So that way you're hedging it essentially. Usually, what I like are typically banks have actually are a safe haven in an inflationary environment.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah.
Sorry about that, gentlemen. Follow up on the emergency that I was dealing with
couple today.
earlier. And important stuff. DG says, was that a flip phone, Mike G? It is, in fact. As a matter of fact, I keep the emergency line as a flip phone. I get much better reception than I do on my smartphones. And I don't have to carry on a second smartphone.
Right,
They actually asked, they said, don't you want to trade this in? I said, no, I'm good. I don't need to carry on two of these things. And it's something nice and compact. So I don't know what I missed during the discussion while I was
You wouldn't believe
gone.
what you missed. You missed the most
Oh
important.
no! He just told us the secret. Everybody else is going to get rich. You just made everybody
Audiences
rich
make
except for
millions,
me.
yeah.
We were talking about plywood though, and I was saying
Yeah,
how I
right.
was out in Beverly Hills and I saw that security officer. and noticed that everything was boarded up from floor to ceiling. And I said, what's going on here? So I asked the security officer, why do they have all the stores boarded up right now? And he said, well, they were concerned that with the election that there would be some riots. And I said, but everything looks fine. Everybody's just out and about doing their own thing. There's no problems here. What did they think was going to happen? He said, well, they really thought there were going to be riots. I said, they thought there were going to be riots if Biden won? And they said, no. They thought there was going to be riots if Trump won.
Yeah.
And I said, so only Biden supporters riot? And he I don't think he understood what I was getting at. I was just being kind of wise at him. But you think that's part of the reason why Wood had that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was
price spike
crazy
at that
amount of plywood that was being put up across the country. Yeah, I believe that was part of it.
And everyone knows that
construction.
protesters won't pass plywood.
Yeah, of course, right.
Riot pass plywood, it's completely anti.
Well, you were down in Philadelphia during the night
that's
of
right. Yeah,
those riots after the.
I was walking through it. Another call? You got another one? It's a hot day here. Well, I was actually thinking, I hate to say this, but that, if Kyle Rittnehouse is found not guilty, that we could see, some rioting after that as well, based on the comments I'm seeing online.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that today. As a matter of fact, because I was listening to the testimony on the radio. I was like, oh my gosh, are we gonna be right back where we were? Was it George Floyd type?
Right,
affair,
exactly.
When all that happened.
Yeah, it seems to be an excuse now for when they disagree with things. And reading the comments online, I'm sure many of our listeners were taking a look at the trial. I don't know, where these people come from, or if they've ever seen the Constitution or have any idea what self-defense is, but it's crazy to see some of the comments directed at Kyle, Rittenhouse regarding, what is it, Russ, reading the comments?
Yeah.
Good, what is it? Yeah.
SM Durso says plywood is racist.
Oh, well, nowadays everything's racist,
Everything
so yeah,
is.
probably is, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It depends.
Especially
Depends
plywood.
on what it is, yeah. What is your overall outlook now, you think, for the market? I know you were talking about that 18-month range. When did you kind of decide on that time frame, or what are you thinking based on what's going on now?
Yeah, I kind of was looking at that a couple months ago. I still kind of feel that way. I'm really just kind of curious to see what happens in January, February, March, after the Christmas rush comes, and I want to see what the impact is to the small business, and I'll see it kind of right away from that perspective, because I'll be able to be up close and personal, in January, and understand that. I have a couple clients that sell a lot of industrial metals.
Oh yeah,
to bigger suppliers, and they're usually my lead in. If they're doing really well, then I know about 18 months from now, the markets and economy is going to do well, and if their sales are off, then I'll find that. And I did, just doing some tax planning for some of them, had noted that their revenues are down a little bit, which was surprising, and using that as a lead in and as a cusp going forward.
Yeah, it sounds like a good indicator of future.
Yeah, because it kind of tells you, okay, this is what almost like the bottom, if you will, of that chain looks like.
Gotcha.
Before it gets to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about a digital dollar coming out at all?
I had heard something along those lines. Probably, I'm going to say that was September or so.
September, okay.
Yeah. I dismissed it a bit because it was, if it's something the government's doing, it sounds like it's going to be another decade, and something else is going to happen in between. But I think it was their concept of trying to combat people moving to the Bitcoin and things like that. And a lot of it, in a way, we already kind of have, when we use those debit cards. I mean, it's essentially the same, right? We're moving money in and out of our bank accounts. I don't know. I don't have enough faith in the government to understand the process to begin with.
Well, sure.
So.
Most people don't anymore.
Yeah.
That seems to be the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. No, it's crazy. And it is interesting, going back to the supply chain issues. And I was watching something today, and they were talking about how, not only are those ships, stacking up, but then I guess the Biden administration also put a penalty on the containers that are building up in the ports and being stacked. And I think there's like $100 fine now per container.
Correct. Yeah, I heard that
too. Did
too.
you see that?
I did.
So, And it's odd because when you do look at these things, it's almost like, geez, is it on purpose? Is it by design to interrupt what's happening with the economy? Because of course those costs are inevitably going to get passed on to the consumer one way or another, right?
Yeah. And that was actually when he went down to speak to him, said, "Oh yeah, we're going to open the port up 7 days, and everybody's working overtime." I'm sitting there going, "Well, how much is this going to actually cost at the end?"
Right.
Because you've just increased the cost, that overtime cost for the people working there.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's going to lose money somewhere in that process, and that's never good.
Yeah,
absolutely, people need to make money in order to even pass it down, if you will.
Right.
So it's almost like they're, again, just slapping that Band-Aid on something without really kind of thinking it all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the problem. Let's try and fix it, and we'll deal with the other problem later.
Right.
Okay.
No, it's all building. It's all stacking on top of each other. It's not good.
Yeah, one piece at a time. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the aliens will come. We talk about the UFO phenomenon on the show sometimes, Chris. So DG just commented that maybe the aliens will save us. Well, hey, no, maybe they'll have an alien cryptocurrency. You never know. Have you been following that at all? Have you seen that reported in the news?
No, I didn't.
UFO stuff, yeah. Where our government's now acknowling the UFOs are real and all that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'd like to talk about some of that stuff as well. What steps do you think the government should take? If you had some thoughts around kind of to redirect the economy, what things do you think would benefit us most right now, from your perspective, your opinion?
I think the government should stay out of it.
Yeah, okay.
Business will fix it.
Right.
They know what to do, and we always did know what to do.
Right.
Government just kind of gets in the way. And it doesn't mean that we have to step on people in the process. A business won't do that. They understand the value of their employees and their workers and their supply chain. If government stays out of the loop,
sure,
it will fix itself.
Less government, yeah. No, I like that. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
I have some.
What's
back,
going on over
guys.
there, Mike? Everybody all right? Everybody okay? You need to go?
Stop getting into defensive gun situations, everybody.
I was going to say the first step I would advise for the government is step 1, stay the hell out, and step 2, there is no step 2.
Yeah, stay out. Go back to step 1.
Right.
Go back to step 1.
Yeah.
The
Step
first
1
rule
doesn't
of
work.
Fight Club is, Absolutely.
I was going to ask that question because my friend literally last night was just like, is this Biden's fault? Because he's like an independent, and I didn't really know how to answer it exactly. Is it that you think that they should not be involved, the government, like the situation that we're getting now? Like you go around, there's like no grande lids at Starbucks. Things are just not coming in.
Oh, the horror!
And there's nobody to hire. And there's no straws. Oh no! Now DG's gonna get mad. Jenna, have you went to Starbucks?
Going to Starbucks.
We don't patronize Starbucks.
No Starbucks
Not anymore.
for anybody.
That's right.
No Starbucks, no Amazon. Actually, no stores whatsoever because they've all got some kind of woke social justice agenda. So you just have to make your own stores from now on. Make your own coffee, grow your own beans.
That sounds like a good idea.
Doesn't it feel like that, though, these days? That
Yeah.
they're all out there in support of the left and in support of these very specific agendas. It's almost like they're on the same team. So if you wanted to sort of support people who are like-minded and you don't agree with them, it's very difficult to do that these days, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier if you sort of support your local businesses, though, right? If you buy from people who are local, you sort of know the families who are running them. I know that here in northern Chester County, you'll drive by certain businesses, they'll have these Trump flags flying up high and things of that nature. So if that's what you want, you can sort of find them, but you're not going to see that at Target or Walmart.
No, and actually, the beauty of really supporting your local business, if you will, is that for every dollar that you spend there, like 98 cents of it stays in your community. You know, if you buy something from Amazon, you spend that same dollar, and 20 cents of it stays here because the rest of it's whether it's going someplace on the West Coast or north or back to China. As the
Bezos
case
will
goes.
take it to space.
Yeah, or wherever. Yeah.
Thank you, Amazon customers.
So have we talked at all about the dependency on other countries for our supplies and things like that? I know I've been
Not
popping in and out of the
not
room.
today.
We
No, it's a
talked
good
about
question
that at
though.
all
Yeah,
because that's got to have something to do. wouldn't things be a little bit better if we had more of what we needed here in the United States of America? I mean, even if it's not even local, like we're talking about, to northern Chester County, a very specific area. But if you had stuff that you get made in the United States, I mean, have you ever tried to really shop made in the United States?
Sure,
it's hard.
It's hard, yeah,
very hard. Yeah,
yeah. We put ourselves in that position, and it's interesting how Trump talked about that even back in the '80s. He hasn't changed his tune for a long time regarding that.
No, and I think he really did try to start to fix that problem by adding those tariffs from onto China at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And what's interesting is that I think both sides of the aisle have been trying to do that for decades, and he came along and did it inside of a year and a half. Which is amazing. But I think to your point, Mike, it is important to kind of be aware where we're buying things, because if it's not northern Chester County, at least to say somewhere, whether it's Delaware Valley or even somewhere inside the United States, we the people are the ones that are able to benefit from that instead of it kind of getting launched overseas. And at this point, they're taking our dollars and building missiles and hypersonic things, shooting us, from space or whatever it is that they're doing. Right. But it's us. We kind of did that by continuing to buy from China.
That's a good point. Right. Yeah, we've
so,
given them the money to build their military.
Yeah. It's exactly what happened. I mean, if you kind of even look at the Chinese economy, if the American people stopped buying from them, they would almost collapse, because we consume. We're very big consumers in this process, and we buy an awful. Not that other countries don't, but it's clear if you look at the budget, it's really the United States that does it. So we as a people almost have to kind of really take stock and say, should I buy from China or should I buy from Missouri, and kind of go from there.
Even if you take away all the horrible things that the communist government is doing over there in China, right? Because that's out there. It's really undeniable.
Yeah, like the Uyghurs, for example.
Well, if you take all that stuff away, which I'm not saying it's not important, and you just think about it from a logical perspective, this regular Joe who's not one of the top wealth managers in the country like we've got over here, and you think, well, if they control all the supplies that we need, and they've got all the stuff that we need, they can really cripple us like that. Sure. Right?
Yeah. And I think they did that in a way when this COVID hit in March of 2020, with the meds. And to your point, I mean, they controlled a lot of our medications. I guess initially we had it in Puerto Rico, but because of the cost, we moved it over to China, and I think we went to get it, and they said no.
Right.
What? You had people that needed these drugs, diabetics and things like that, and we couldn't get it. And you would think that we have learned that lesson, and I don't know that we have, because I don't know that. Now,
we seem to have a short memory here.
Yeah, sure.
Americans,
it's unfortunate. Yeah. But that's an important thing. I mean, that's life-saving.
Yeah, I think they control 95% of our antibiotics. Imagine if they stopped shipping those suddenly.
Yeah.
Talk about a strategic thing they could do if they really wanted to hurt us.
Right, but what are we doing to offset that? And I think that becomes more of an issue. And I get we all want to make money, and it's cheaper to send it over someplace else. But,
sure.
What's wrong with Brazil?
Yeah, friendlier countries, right?
Yeah, there's other than China or India. India is a democracy. It's the largest one in the world. Why don't we send it there instead of the communist country?
Russ has a lab too at home, so he could make the stuff.
You can make the
right.
But it's interesting when you take that to the next level. Though logically, you say, okay, well, we don't want the stuff coming from the medicines coming from China because there are problems like this. As a consumer, I'd imagine it'd be almost impossible to start to buy prescribed medications based upon where they're coming from. I mean, I've never asked the pharmacist, where was this stuff made? It's like, hey, you want the brand name or the generic? I don't know. Where are the factories? He might be like, dude, I don't know. Or do they know that stuff? Does the pharmacist know?
Probably in that tiny little...
No, I don't think that they do. But I think, I guess... that's really where the government would be able to come in and say, all right.
Okay.
And again, you come back to what Trump had done as far as the tariffs.
Right.
By doing stuff like it doesn't really work on meds because they pretty much had a monopoly
on
it. But by adding those tariffs on, it's designed to equalize the pricing.
Problem is the barriers to entry to create a lab that can produce the meds is pretty challenging too. It's not like you can start doing it in a few days. So,
No.
but we should shift it here.
I mean, you got to have a
Shift
ton
it
of money
back here,
to comply with all the regulations and stuff
Yeah,
too,
right,
right?
yeah.
You know.
Well, hopefully they're applying with some regulations coming. If they're doing it in China, and it's coming and we're eating it.
Right.
You know? I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
But they should, in theory, have some of this already still in Puerto Rico, right? I mean, we
think
were
so.
doing it there for years.
I believe so, yeah.
And that's a U.S. territory, so.
Well, it's a good question to ask, but people are not asking those questions. They're just going to the pharmacy and taking the stuff home and not reading that tiny little piece of tissue paper with the tiny writing on it.
It says
in there.
where
You
it
can't
comes
read.
from.
Yeah,
Right. You need your magnifying glass. Like,
It's
what
like,
country is this?
I don't even know if it's on the bottle.
Right. I know, yeah, I have to look into that. It's a
Ross,
good question
scroll
to ask.
scroll up a little bit because I saw a question on here for Chris that I want to
Oh, yeah?
have a discussion about something that an issue that somebody raised. Right up there, next one. Up. Okay, so Hurricane 999 Anon says if communities forced out big business, would small business grow? I'm playing some SimCity in my head right now. How would you win a local election to persuade a mayor to push out a big business? Now, I don't know that that's necessarily the answer so much as the people pushing out the big business by buying stuff elsewhere. Would that be a fair assessment?
That's the answer. It's the consumer has to do it. Consumer has to drive it. Instead of going to Walmart or Target to buy your thing, you go to your local store, local boutique store. Instead of Home Depot or Lowe's, you go to your local hardware store. But we as people, I mean, we like cheap stuff. So,
right, that's what I was going to say. It's
so
got to
we
be
go
more expensive.
Yeah,
They're
gonna be
never
more
going to match
expensive.
the price of Walmart. That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, that's exactly, and that's because they're getting it from China in bulk, and it's kind of coming over here. It's almost kind of the same concept as our food. When we buy organic, we're paying more money than we're buying something that is non-organic. So, but it seemed like as a population, we started moving in that direction by itself. So, can we do the same thing? I don't know the answer to that. You know, would a $400 TV from Walmart or the same TV that's going to cost $700?
Sure.
You know, that's
Well,
an economic
are
decision.
there really, when you talk about something like a television set, right? I remember when I was a kid, you did have local appliance stores over in New York. But I can't think of any that I've seen lately where it's an appliance store that sells something like television sets that's not a Best Buy or a Walmart or a Target. Are they still out there even?
I don't know that they are.
Not as many. You know, more for the high-end stuff. Like the boutique places.
Yeah,
like
it's
Hi-Fi
specialized.
House locally, you know.
Mhm.
Well, you're right, Mike. But that's the problem we've seen, too. And I think that's another important point with the pandemic. We've seen the money funnel to, very few companies, Amazon and the likes of Walmart and the companies that were allowed to stay open and thrive, during the pandemic. So.
Yeah, you almost kind of created a monopoly
Absolutely.
in that process of forcing everybody else to close down.
Yeah, what is it like for the top 6 or 7 companies in the country now? It used to be like the S&P 500, but now you have less than 10 companies that make up, I think,
certain areas
60, 70% of the sales, I think.
In certain areas, people are willing to pay more for things out of convenience. So, like Whole Foods, you didn't think that people would want to go there because sometimes it's like double the price, but people do.
Yeah.
So the question is, can these local companies do
Amazon
something
now.
similar to kind of offset Amazon? That's what I'm always
Right,
thinking about
right.
as a big consumer.
And they're owned by Amazon now. They bought
Yeah,
them.
Right, yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we
they're
can
They are, that's a good point.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So there
It
you
all
have it.
comes back. So they also, I think, created a long-standing effect on people just as by way of their habits, right? Because maybe at the time of the pandemic, by shutting everybody else down, you only had that option. And, people couldn't leave their houses for a period of time, right?
Yeah.
At least that's what the government said.
You were told
Right.
not to.
We were told not to leave the house.
Some of us still
Some
went out.
people were walking around, right?
Yeah.
I was that guy. Maybe I didn't have anywhere to go or anything like that. And once Governor Murphy over in Jersey was saying, if we see you in the park, we're going to arrest you. It's like, screw that guy. We're going to the park. Come on, pack up your stuff.
That's right.
Pack up. We're going.
That's right.
Don't tell me what to do.
Exactly.
But when this was all happening and you had the competition crippled in that sense, that was one thing. I'm sure a lot of people went out of business. They just couldn't handle it anymore. But then you also have the consumers who sort of got used to doing things a certain way. They like having everything show up at their door. They like the fact that with the groceries, let's say, the groceries show up at the door. I don't have to spend a couple of hours every week inside the grocery store to pick up my stuff. It just shows up, and that's the end of that. Do you think there's something to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We really changed our habits on how we do things, and which is why we have the Instacarts and all that really we're kind of struggling on the back end there. So clearly that's made a big difference, and the smaller boutiques really couldn't survive, through that process. And I think, that's where you can look at the government, and they stepped up right away to give a funnel of cash right away. But now it's just kind of gotten out of hand from that process, and I'm sure there's a lot of fraud that has happened in that process as well.
Not to mention price gouging.
No,
well, some of that
back
too.
when that was during the pandemic.
Well, it's still happening now. You look at things that are hard to find. I'm not talking like toilet paper or anything that happened to be banned at some point. But if you look at
toilet paper was banned, I don't remember that part. Don't you dare!
Maybe in your neighborhood.
It was. Listen,
screw you, Phil Murphy.
not banned from use, but banned from online sale because people were charging, $8 or $9 a roll, and it wasn't even the good roll.
Right.
But I'm not talking, the bidet lobbyists took over.
We did talk about bidets last week.
But
if you missed last week's episode,
we gotta get a sponsor.
What I'm specifically
Chris
thinking
is
of.
forgetting his appearance by the minute. By the way. Right. During the week, he was like, "So, Mike, what are you going to talk about? The economy, the dollar,
Bidets.
rinse and butts."
Well, I think of some specific items such as the new Xbox and PlayStation. Those are still hard to find.
Really?
Yeah, and they're still inflated prices. So the Xbox Series S, the lower tier one, it's supposed to be sold for $299 retail. Well, they're still going for $300 and $400. And it's greatly reduced. They were going for probably
$1 over retail.
No, I'm talking. They're selling for retail, but then they're charging $50 shipping.
Yeah,
and
no,
it doesn't cost $50 to ship one of those.
Right.
So why do they do that? Any idea where they tack it onto the shipping?
I think it's why they tack it on there, so it looks better. But
for a better price.
It's also a supply demand issue. We're seeing that with automobiles. People MSRP. Last I saw was a truck going for $10,000 over MSRP. So,
really?
Yeah.
Used cars are high right now too.
The
used car market.
Because the new ones are $10,000, and you still can't get them.
Yeah, driving that other market up. Yeah. Supply and demand.
Do you think maybe they did that on purpose? Because if you look back at 2020, like March and April, and nobody's driving, right?
Right.
Everybody's staying in the house. Why would anybody want a new car at that point? I'm sure the lots were just filled with these things where they couldn't get rid of them.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you had that problem during that time, but when we kind of stopped the world, if you will, it's taken some time for it to turn back on. So you had car dealerships that had the inventory. They sold out the inventory, but now they don't have the rest of it's still in the Pacific Ocean waiting to get across. So.
Plus, most modern inventory systems are just in time, so put a big hiccup.
Sure.
In the inventory systems,
and everybody's ordering it, so it's not just the Lexus dealership up here, it's the one in Philadelphia, the ones in Delaware, Florida or wherever it is. So.
Logistics nightmare. Really.
Willow Grove.
It's also like couches and like household items. They're saying, for like 9 months you can't even get this in. I'm like, when does this stuff?
Yeah, there's not much it hasn't affected, really. Yeah, there's not much it hasn't impacted.
So how long do you think the market can continue on in this positive direction? Is there any shot that it continues for the full term of Biden's presidency, or do you think we're going to see the rug be pulled out from under us and tumble down like a house of cards? Because I remember thinking this during the Obama administration at some point, saying something's not adding up. It can't keep going like this, and it did throughout Trump's presidency for the most part as well, right?
Yeah, we probably should have. I would have thought, ignoring Donald Trump himself, with the change in administration, I would have thought we would have had a market correction. But with what Trump did right out of the box, it was completely the other option. If it was somebody else, we probably would have seen a correction. But he was very, very pro-business. And if business does well, everybody will do well. Now, to answer the initial question or comment on it at least, I think we're going to know a lot more once Christmas is over, and we'll be able to see what happens to those smaller companies, how well they fare in January, February, March, and April. But I think 18 months is kind of our window. And then we have an election coming up next year, so there's going to be something that's going to kind of push that along. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. Yeah, that's the question.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of the Trump administration, because I remember when he was running for office, or even when he just won the election before he was sworn in, you heard all of these people in the mainstream media just saying things like, the economy is going to go straight to the toilet now, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be terrible for the economy, and it just didn't happen. And when they saw that it wasn't happening, really what they did was they said, oh, well, that's really not his fault. Obama did all of that,
course,
right?
Of course.
Well, it's not unusual for the president leaving office to carry some of that economy over. But what's different with Trump's, if you look at a chart, that really spiked. So normally you would just see it kind of moving along. But when Trump took office, it was a matter of weeks and the thing was going up. So it was the market reacting immediately saying, we want him to be in. So I don't buy it's the Obama economy. No.
And
it was all Trump.
I mean,
it
that
doesn't make
long
any sense.
too, right?
Yeah.
Especially with him changing the policy, you think that if he was really that bad, that one of them would sort of tank the whole thing, no?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think his policies were the right policies to put in place.
He got rid of a lot of regulation.
Yeah,
that was, hanging things up. And
So
he
if
was
you could think of like
effective
one
quickly.
thing that comes to your mind that's sort of like, hey, I don't think a lot of people realize that Trump did this, but this greatly benefited the economy. Is there anything that sort of sticks out in your mind with something like that?
If the economy specifically, I would probably be inclined to say the tariffs with China. That was the big thing, and that we needed to do. We needed to do that decades ago, and every president, Bush the first, Clinton, Bush the second, Obama, everybody talked about it.
Right.
Nobody did a thing.
Just lip service, right?
Yeah. And Trump came in and did it kind of right away.
So another thing that I recall him talking about, and this is probably going back to 2012 when he didn't run, but he was just doing some speech somewhere in New Hampshire, I think it was, or maybe Maine. And he was talking about China, and he said, if I run, the minute I get in my office, I'm calling China, I'm going to say, stop screwing with your currency because they manipulate their currency all the time. Is that true?
Yeah, they do. Essentially, they sustain it internally, which makes it appear as if it's a stronger currency than it really is. And they lie, flat out. So, which is part of the concern right now. The oil is when you trade oil, no matter where you are, you trade it in dollars. And China has been kind of putting a lot of pressure to say, oh no, we want to trade it in wands.
Right.
No, because we have no idea really what that number is.
Sure.
It's kind of the same concept that they only had 50 cases of COVID during this whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Whatever you say.
Right.
With our fiat currency, being OPEC dollar, that has an impact. Yeah.
SM Durso says, I missed something. What is 18 months? That's when the depression is going to happen, right, Chris?
Guaranteed. You heard it.
You heard it here first.
Speculation.
You missed the most
now.
important part.
Yeah.
I think my mic's
I think all of us just dropped out for a minute.
I had to turn you guys down.
We're laughing too hard.
Yeah.
So, but just to recap over there, 18 months you think is probably where we're not going to see it continue in this direction. Is that a fair assessment, that it would be very difficult to continue in this direction?
And the holiday
for
season
18
you brought
months.
up, I think,
But
is
the holiday
right
season's
thing,
going to be,
yeah.
okay, so depending on the holiday season.
Yeah, I think the holiday season's going to tell us a lot. Once we get through that, we'll be able to have a better picture of what it's going to look like, whether it's April, August, or even this time next year. I speculate that it can only sustain about 18 months. But at the same time, American people are very resilient. And with some of the things that are going on, if they're ignoring what the government's doing, that can certainly counteract everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Sure. And it's important for everybody to keep their eyes open because we saw how quickly in March of 2020, things can go south, right?
Oh yeah,
And I think a lot of people were not prepared.
No.
I don't know how many people learned their lesson, now have things on hand, prepared for these kinds of things. Is that something that you often think about? They're got to be ready for a couple of months just in case something like this breaks down?
Yeah, now I do. I
Sure.
know for myself, I'm kind of stockpiled for a couple weeks, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, the prepping communities are getting a lot more respect now.
Yeah. I was like,
Right.
you know, I just-
You guys are onto something.
I texted a buddy of mine. He's like, but me and my buddy's been planning for this for like 10 years. We're
Right.
good. They're like, finally, I get to
Right,
use this stuff. Right?
Well, it shows how fragile we are, you know, and this impacted so many aspects of modern civilization globally. You know, it is we live in a fragile way.
Yeah, but did we learn our lesson?
That's a good point. Probably not. Probably not. Yeah. Short memory.
Our memories are short.
Yeah, short memory. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's wild right now is the real estate market, right?
That's kind of crazy now. It actually doesn't make sense. You know, it's hard to almost put a finger on it as far as these prices go. And again, that's going to have to give at some point.
Yeah.
I think really what's happening there is that interest rates right now are so incredibly low. It's allowing people to buy more house for that same dollar, if you will.
Yeah.
But at some point, those interest rates got to give, and they're going to start to go up. 18 months or something along those lines, and then we're going to start to see kind of that pullback. I think the Fed has already indicated they're going to probably be raising rates in 2022 a couple of times, so we should start to see that housing market pull back because the cost of the house, the buying power of your dollar is going to shrink a bit.
Good point.
So basically, for knuckleheads who don't pay attention to that kind of stuff on a general basis, I went to law school because I'm bad at math, but I think I understand the concept, right? So if you have a $300,000 house, let's say, and you've got somebody who can afford that payment based on the interest rates right now, that same person, if they came along and tried to buy that house that was purchased for $300,000, in a few years, if those interest rates are higher, they're not going to be able to pay that $300,000 because in order to meet that payment that the other person got, it'd have to be $275, let's say, or something that's lower. $250. Okay.
Yeah, it could be significant.
So now the person who paid $300, they're not going to get $300, at least from somebody who's in a similar position as they were when they bought it.
Correct. Yeah. And
there are other factors, though, right? Like, are they building any more real estate? Is there anywhere else for people to go? Supply and demand, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it seems that the construction industry seems to be doing well at the moment. So they're always building, particularly in northern Chester County, as we know. So I think that's going to kind of continue, but that kind of creates a glut of supply. We're fortunate where we live in the respect that our proximity to a large city, and people working more remotely, they're more willing to invest in that house. But it comes back to how much is that house going to be worth? If I spend $600,000 or $300,000 on a house now, it's going to be worth $250,000 when the market now. It'll come back in time. Typically, housing appreciates 2.5–3% a year, so it'll come back in time. And
so if you wait it out, then maybe you'll be in a good position.
It'll
anyway.
be moot. Yeah. And we do see spikes from time to time, but those spikes happen every 10 or 15 years. So.
But it's been going on for a while now, right? I mean, if you looked at going back to right around COVID, you had a couple of houses would show up every now and then when they did pop up, they'd be gone in like 3 days.
Yeah,
and
it's a hot market. Yeah,
you know, I've heard of people having like 75 bids on the house, and it goes for way above what they were asking for. Just outrageous stuff going on.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense, you know. But I think it comes down to, you know, if you're getting a 2.5% mortgage rate, they want to get in before that happens. You know, before that goes up.
Gotcha.
So. Because you know,
if the
300,
you're
gonna lose the house.
Hey,
so.
I won't be able to get into this kind of house. I'll have to go into something that's
and paying an extra $50,000. You spread that out over 30 years. I mean,
true.
really, what's $2,000 extra a year, an extra $150 a month, or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. But now this is different than the situation we had during the Bush administration. When did the housing crisis?
It was 89, I guess.
I'm talking about the George W. Bush. Early 2000s when we had the mortgage.
2008.
2008. So that was right beginning of Obama.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So when that happened, that was a different situation because they were giving out bad mortgages, basically, right?
Yes. Well,
I think they were
yeah.
giving everybody money.
So if you really kind of look at the history of that, it was the Clinton administration that was forcing banks to provide people that really shouldn't get a mortgage. So they were saying for every 4 people that you give a mortgage to that qualify, you have to give 1 to somebody that doesn't qualify. And that's what they were saying.
You said you had a job? Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. You don't have a job, but you're going to get one?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
No problem.
You thought about it?
So what they did was they took those mortgage, bundled it, and sold it to banks. And banks didn't necessarily know that what they were buying. They assumed that they were all decent.
Right.
And what happened is in 2008, they all started collapse. People couldn't afford to pay.
They were doing something funny too. I forgot what it was called, but like securitization. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
The loans, right?
Yeah.
Where they were, because you could loan out like 10 times the amount that they were holding. I think, right? Something along those lines. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. It was, and that was the culmination of all this that was happening.
So it just exploded. The available money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You could almost go into a bank with just a piece of paper and say, I need a loan, and they would give it to you.
Right.
And there really wasn't, like today, it's really hard to they document it, they want a proof of income and that type of stuff. 2003,
it was crazy.
It wasn't
I
like
remember
that at all.
Yeah, it was nuts.
So we don't have that right now because we've got people who are getting these mortgages. They're paying these higher prices, but they really are qualified for these mortgages, at least as far as we know, right? We can find something out.
There's as long as the underwriter's doing their job, which as far as I can tell they are, because they still have to take these mortgages and they sell them into the open market. So they're certifying that we did their job. If you're kind of iffy in getting a mortgage, you want to go to a bank that holds the mortgage in house and doesn't sell it. So that's your local bank. So you go to your local bank; they're more inclined to hold it instead of sell it.
Right. So local again is a good thing.
There you go.
Yeah,
kind of coming back. Yeah.
Right?
Credit unions are good too.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, credit unions are pretty good at
Citadel.
Well, what's the
credit union
difference?
around here.
You know the difference?
Usually lower costs, I think, better service too.
Yeah. Credit unions are owned by the members, and they're usually something that's in common. Like Citadel used to be Luke and Steel Credit Union, so you had to be a steel worker to get it. And then they changed their charter so that as long as you live in Chester County,
I used to have them. They're good. They're good.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So throwing it out there. They want to sponsor us, though.
They should. We'll have to give them a call.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Give them a call right now, Russ.
You see them sometimes, like I think Navy Federal Credit Union. So
Yeah,
Navy
same.
Yeah, so they have something in common.
The unions have them. Yeah.
We should make some kind of credit union for people who are like-minded with
Let's
us.
do
right?
it. Let's do it. Yeah. Buy U.S. Credit Union.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Let's go, Brandon Credit Union.
That's right. There you go. Let's go, Brandon. That might work.
That's
actually.
it. We're gonna be rich, boys. We've figured it out.
We've got the solution.
So, what do you think for the next generation would be some of the concerns financially? I mean, because if you've got kids and you see that they're going to be growing up in this world that's being laid out, do you think that you've got serious concerns about the way the world's going to look when they ultimately become of age and it's time for them to have a life and them to have a house and their own job?
Yeah. I mean, I have concerns. I kind of come back that the government's fingers are too deep in people's lives, and people can't function like that. I guess some people can. That's the way they want it. I know my kids don't. They're looking for more autonomy and being able to work. And if the government continues to kind of override even small business factors, which they do through regulation, it's just going to kind of stymie stuff and not allow it to flow.
Right.
Scott says the 2A credit union.
Hey, there we go.
Second Amendment credit union.
Scott
Rock and
says
roll.
Scott. Good idea, Scott.
Rock and roll. So, did have a couple of more questions for you. People talk about a total collapse of the dollar, where it becomes essentially worthless. You talk about this quite a bit, right?
I have some concerns about it.
Do you think it's a problem that the dollar's not backed by anything?
Well, we always would love it to be backed by gold, which is a concern. But I think as long as us, as the American people, are willing to use something as a medium of exchange, whatever that is, whether we call it the dollar or what have you, I think will be okay. It's just a matter of what that dollar will buy down the road, and then that kind of comes back to either inflation or deflation, for that matter. As the dollar may bottom out at some point.
Does it make it that much easier for them to just print more of it when it's not backed by something? Right?
Yeah. All they have to do is push a button, and then that's kind of it. And it's that's scary. That's where you get back into just going back through history into the 1920s. They did that in Germany, trying to recover, and you ended up in a situation where people were buying loaves of bread with wheelbarrows full of marks.
I think there's a lot of similarities to what's going on now.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting point, though, because today you wouldn't have that. Does it make it easier for us to get to that point because you don't have to actually put something physically into a wheelbarrow to get somewhere, and you're just swiping your card, and we're dealing with all this electronic stuff? Does it make it sort of easier for us to get to that point, or does it really not matter because it's ultimately up to what the government's doing? Or could we be desensitized more?
I think that's I would say that it's almost harder to understand what it is that you're spending, on a particular item. So I guess to that point, I would say yes.
And people are so squeezed right now. To your point, Mike, how many folks have credit card debt that they're living paycheck to paycheck. Not, most Americans are right on the edge right now.
Yep.
And everything's getting more expensive. And even to your point about buying a home, even if the interest rates stay the same, the cost of ownership is going up. Oil's going up, everything around it's going up. So
Yes, it's not what it once was.
It's a house of cards right now, in my opinion. In my own personal opinion.
Taxes are going to go
taxes,
up. So
taxes.
that
supply chain
brutal.
problems,
Yeah.
All the things we talked about today.
How long will people stay fooled, though, saying, oh, well, I'm actually doing pretty good because I'm making this amount of money, or I've got this amount of money, but it's going out as fast as it's coming in?
Yeah, I think that's going to come to a head, and I think that's where that's the beyond 18-month kind of point.
Gotcha.
People are going to start to feel that pinch. They're going to try to sell their houses or assets in order to create cash I think that's where there's going to be some problems.
Which will drive the prices down too.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'll have the opposite. You'll have that correction.
Didn't you talk about a digital dollar potentially, Chris?
Yeah. I've seen some things about that. When you stepped out during the emergency call, Chris and I were talking about that briefly, because I have some concerns about where they may go. Since our dollar is a fiat currency, and some of the things they've done during the Biden administration with the new tax rules that they've discussed to track everything. So it certainly would be a lot easier to track a digital currency and tax it and do whatever you wanted to and manipulate it. And from what I've seen, they've even talked about doing negative interest rates on it for spending. Have you seen that? Yeah. So, and then saving it becomes an issue because
so
you're
if
losing
you
money.
don't spend it, then
you lose it.
You lose it.
Yeah, they'll erode it away. So it becomes something we've never really seen before in this country.
Do you think
they did that in Japan?
Did they?
Had negative interest rates for a bit. It's not a good situation.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Russ popping in.
Well, I do have a question about the debt as far as when the dollar eventually meets its bottom. Let's say we all hear these commercials. Oh, if you have more than $10,000, blah 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 blah. Let's say somebody does have $10,000 in credit card debt. The dollar is becoming increasingly worthless. What happens when we move to this new currency? Does it get converted? Do you just pay it off the worthless 10,000?
They maximize the debt. Because I was saying that. I say, okay, so the bad news is you got this mortgage you got to deal with. The bad news is the dollar's collapsing. The good news is you'll be able to pay off whatever's outstanding on your mortgage with a couple of weeks' wages at some point. How much do I owe? Like our example, $300, right? How much do I owe? $300. Here's $350. Keep the change. Buy yourself some toilet paper with the tip.
Right.
Or that's a possibility, though, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, if it's totally worthless, it's like, well, I owe $300,000.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Well, the other question would be, does it just get converted to 10,000 of whatever the new currency happens to
Well,
be?
I was reading an article.
Well, it wouldn't be a different currency, would it? It would
Well,
just be
well,
same
okay,
becomes
digital
a new
dollar.
form of it. But I saw something very concerning a while ago, and if they did this, it would
Yeah.
be frightening in my opinion. But where they, let's say Russ had, 10,000 paper dollars, and then they convert it to the new U.S. digital dollar, they may do it based on some sort of equity. So
We're
depending
going
on
to do it
your-
with
your
points.
race
We're going to do it with
a
frequent
score.
flyer
Yeah.
miles.
Oh,
That's
and,
new
and the
currency.
social
Like a
social credit
social
score they're
score,
working
huh?
on too. So I saw some articles about it. Whether or not they could even pull that off, but the way things are going right now, if they did decide to do that and based it on,
Do you think
know, your-
let's just say even half the country, do you think half the country would agree with something like that?
well, that's a good point. The way things are right
A
now,
lot of
they're-
people
they're
talk a
agreeing.
big game,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
They go
Yeah.
out, they talk
Yeah.
a big game about
Mm-hmm.
how they don't like us and
Sure.
people on the right and how
We're quite divided, so that's
Yeah,
a good
very
point,
much.
Mike. Yeah, it really depends on how many people would go along with it, and I think that.
that would certainly be
Sure.
scary
Mhm.
if it went that route. But
Mhm.
if they did ultimately start to do something like that, where you've got, what did you call it, where you with the interest,
With the negative interest.
negative
negative
interest.
right? Yeah.
what do people do? They start taking their money and putting it overseas or something like that.
Or put it in mattresses.
Put it in
Yeah,
a
I mean, you'd be better off there than
gold,
a bank.
gold
yeah.
or silver. Gold or silver. Some
Yeah.
people are looking at cryptos, but Chris and I were talking about the cryptos too, and I think we both have concerns based on what you said. What that's really going to be? It could be a big Ponzi scheme. They're going to pull the rug out on. So.
Who's going to pull the rug out on them? Because
I think they could regulate it. I think they could
sure.
regulate
That's
it,
probably what scares
they're
me the
starting
most.
to,
Is the
yeah.
government stepped in and said, "All right, party's over.
Right.
Here's what you got to do from now on. You can only be involved if X, Y, and Z," and it just cripples
Yeah.
the entire thing. Because every time they get involved, right?
Yeah. But ultimately, it's a medium of exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just somehow that value is created. I think Bitcoin closed at like 66,000 today.
Yeah, it's pretty
Somehow
amazing, yeah.
there's that value.
Right.
What is it backed by? Essentially, right now, what do you convert it to? If you were going to sell your Bitcoin, what are you going to get?
Right.
Dollars, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
we're all
that's
looking
true.
for dollars.
We're all looking
You
for
know,
dollars.
Right.
That's
so,
a good point.
Sure.
My concern was always that if the founder or creator of that Bitcoin could just, I'm just going to create more. Okay.
Right.
So I don't understand
Can
enough
you-
about
can
it.
you do
blockchain.
that? I
They
don't
say
know that
with
you
the
can.
blockchain there's a limited supply, but then again you're talking about a digital instrument, so anything's
Change it.
possible. Right. They could modify it, hack it. That's been, some people's wallets, I think they're called, have been hacked, and there's been scams already with certain electronic.
We got a question from
Bitcoin-like
Chris.
currencies,
A
yeah.
question from Chris, for Chris, not you, not Philly Chris. Chris Ruggiero from Scott says, in Cyprus a few years back, their government confiscated any money in bank accounts that was over $100,000. Can you see eventually our own government doing that since, I don't know, doing that? Let's ask that question.
Yeah, I think indirectly they do it just by printing more dollars, because you're devaluing the dollar. I don't think they're going to go in and necessarily take it unless you owe back taxes. They will do that. That would wreak havoc on the economic situation in America, and ultimately you would have to look at it from a treasury bill standpoint, because it's not just the U.S. citizens that own that, but people overseas. That could be a real problem.
Right.
So I would say no, but they indirectly through devaluation of the dollar.
That makes sense.
This is why we need Chris Ruggiero, because we can all go crazy with our conspiracy theories. Like we'll go. we will go
conspiracy theories,
Like,
yeah.
No, but
Hey, is
because
this
before
possible?
we would have never thought that everybody needed a mask and that this situation would have happened. We all would have been locked in our houses and scared to go everywhere. I don't put anything past anything at this point.
Sure.
That's why that's the direction
Right.
I go in. So I think we need people like him to bring us back to reality and kind of explain it and the details, because it can get scary.
Yeah.
We've all been through
Yeah.
something really scary now. So, I don't know.
There's a lot
It's
of global
important for-
changes going on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. And if you
Yeah.
look at the World
Scott says,
Economic
drop
Forum,
down to my
yeah.
next text. He said, since so many Americans bank, invest, and pay bills through electronic means connected directly to their bank accounts, I think that goes back to the answer stays the same, right?
Yeah, it does.
But they can clear it out if you owe them some money. We're just gonna go take this.
Sure.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. I've seen it happen to
Really?
clients of ours. Yeah, they'll just
Wow.
go in, they have back taxes, they lien it and take it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's rough.
They did that to the gym owner there in New Jersey too, who's gone against some of the closures during COVID.
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah, I remember
They
that.
seized
Now, did
his
they-
bank accounts.
Oh,
yeah.
is it because of the fines that
I
he
believe
owes?
because of the fines
Get
imposed
outta
by
here.
Governor Murphy. Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
That is
That's why he's
bonkers.
selling T-shirts now to get by. Yeah.
That is bonkers.
And making a lot of money on them, but you know.
Wow. Well, hopefully he's actually
keep-
making money and not just having
Yeah,
to give it directly.
but that's not
to
over.
him.
That's not
Right.
over.
Right?
Yeah, I think he could face jail time too. It's my understanding. Yeah,
I thought so too. I
yeah
heard that.
from what I heard. Yeah,
Yeah,
It
that's,
is.
that's wild.
It's
we need to have
crazy
him on the
business.
show. I'll have to reach out to him.
Yeah, you know, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good point that you raised. That if somebody would have told us a few months before COVID, hey, in a few months everybody's gonna be forced to stay inside their houses for a period of time. Businesses are gonna be forced to close. If you want to come out, you know, months later, you're gonna have. Not even months later, right? A year later.
I was telling people, remember?
With
About 3 months.
I
was. I went out to some local bars and I told everybody, I said, "You're gonna think I'm crazy, but I'm gonna come back in a few months."
Yeah. But even like things like the mask thing that continue on to today. If you would have told somebody that before all that happened, they probably wouldn't believe you. They would have looked at you like you had 10 heads, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think we're seeing more and more wild things happen as
Wait for the false flag alien invasion. That's
the false flag alien invasion?
The coin shortage.
Yep.
DG.
Yeah,
Chip,
the coin
the chip,
shortage.
shortage,
Yeah.
Everything.
It's
Like
a great way to get people to
Yeah,
use
w-
electronic payments. Yeah.
the coin shortage
Yeah.
is very strange.
Yeah, what is that all about, the coin
Yeah.
shortage?
There's a lot of psychology there. Yeah, you can't tell me they couldn't
It's
make
all
coins. I mean,
nonsense, is what it is.
it's
They're like, hey, there's a coin shortage. Can you give us your coins so that we can
Yeah, the
make
Great
change
Reset.
or whatever? No, they're collecting
Reset,
it. They're
yeah.
melting it down.
Getting us ready so that we can get scanned now.
They're making the coin shortage, and everyone who gave money to like the people who were asking for change, they contributed to it.
So they're hoarding all of the change, is that what you're saying?
Well, they're either hoarding it or melting it down.
Sean Durso says.
Why don't you get a microphone over there so we can
SM
hear you?
Durso says, Philly Chris, I heard you mention the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset.
That's exactly what I was referring to earlier. Yeah, when we were talking about
And-
that. If you look at some of those websites, they're
Is that where you said you'll
And you're-
own nothing and you'll be happy? Or
right.
is that-
Exactly.
Is it that
right.
one?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Or the great, what do they call it? The Great Resignation is happening, they're saying now.
Sure.
There's,
Yeah, so-
you cannot hire. Somebody actually tried to hire me the other day through like a drive-through. And I was like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Like, things are very strange.
Right. Yeah, things are pretty odd.
Yeah, we're
Are you noticing that with everybody being short-staffed?
Oh yeah,
Other
we're
businesses?
we're seeing other businesses try and steal other employees. I mean,
Oh,
it's
okay.
crazy. what's
Really?
kinda-
Interesting.
Yeah, and everybody just wants to be able to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what's going to cause at some point again that's got to come to a head
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's this Christmas season again, kind of coming back to that with the worker shortage during Christmas.
Right. There's
Now
always a
everybody has to
shortage
buy
during
from
Christmas.
Amazon.
If nobody can staff their stores right
Yeah.
now, it's going to be
Even
nuts
worse.
after Black
Yeah.
Friday, right?
Yeah, it is.
So lack of product, lack of employees. Yeah,
I got
and-
nothing on the shelves. I got
But
no
I have a question. If the unemployment has stopped, because that was kind of what was being blamed for a while, because the unemployment was being extended. If that stopped, then what's going on now? Like if that
That's a good
stopped, you
question.
thought
Well, I
everybody
think
was
they've-
going to go back to work,
I think
right?
there's some psychology to
Yeah.
it. They've drilled into people's heads that they shouldn't even work unless it's a certain minimum
How are they paying
hourly rate to
Yeah,
some
but
degree.
Then what do
You
they
know?
do though?
Well, yeah, but I think wage rates too are going up.
They have, yeah.
And we didn't need the government to put in a $15 minimum wage for
True.
it to happen.
That's
But
true.
I think the business owners are saying, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I need somebody here, so I'm going to raise my wage, to get somebody
Yeah,
in.
right.
I had heard somebody over the summer, a waiter that normally gets paid $2 an hour. The owner needed people. He was paying them $19 an hour plus tips.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, which is a pretty good
That's
deal.
out of
you
out of
know.
ordinary for a restaurant, right?
But you didn't need the government to kind of get involved
Right.
for that to happen. So I think you're right. I think people are just waiting for the wage increase,
Mm-hmm.
which is better than having the government mandate a $15 an hour
True,
minimum wage.
true. Mhm.
That's usually
Let the market work it out.
yeah, business owners know what they need to. That comes back to keep the government out of it. Let the business owner figure it out. Usually minimum wage is tied to union contracts. So when that goes up, so union workers usually get big jumps too at the same time. So
Do you think a lot of the union workers who are there and they see this minimum wage say, hey, it took me how many years to get to that number and now you get it out of the gate because of something like that? Is there some kind of bitterness in the workplace and that happens?
I think there will be. I always kind of thought, well, if this person's getting $15 an hour, or gets brought up to $15 an hour with the minimum wage, well, what about the guy making $17 an hour? You know, you just took away his buying power essentially. Right. So that person has to increase proportionately for it to be the same, and basically $15 an hour becomes the same $7.25 eventually.
The cost of goods and services have gone up so much anyway. Yeah. And business owners, what's the accounting equation? Assets equal liability plus owner equity, right?
You got it. Yeah, very good.
Wow.
Bravo. Cha-ching. You got it.
Right.
You need to hire Philly Chris.
Yeah, there we go. Me and John.
I got a couple things left up there.
So you have these people who are looking for work, but how are they surviving right now? I think we go back to that question, right? If they're no longer on the government assistance, because they're not getting that money, I say from the government.
Maybe
it's
they
really
have
from
some
the
left
people,
over.
right?
From the people, it all comes.
Yeah.
Government makes nothing. It's all the people's money. So
That's kind of that's what I mentioned today. Somebody was saying earlier that their doctor was encouraging them to get the vaccine, and we're not going to get into the merits of that, but he was saying it's safe, it's effective, and it's free. And I said, well, how is it free?
Not free. Nothing's free. No free lunch. Economics 101.
That comes down to everything. Nothing's ultimately
Nothing's free.
Right?
Yeah, somebody's paying for something.
No, it's interesting when you hear these young folks talk about how the schools should be free, and it's like, well, who's going to pay for it? Well, the taxes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who pays the
Where's that
taxes?
come from?
Yeah. Well, it's just taxes.
Yeah.
I love how the government always tries to take credit for it, though, right? It's on us, guys. We're buying. It's like, oh, thank you, sir.
Right.
However, can we repay you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the politics of it, though. You're catering to that one group of people and saying, hey, free college really kind of brings in, or paying off the student loan debt. That brought a whole group of young people into the mix.
Yeah, and then you really devalue the college education on top of it if everybody has one.
Yeah.
And you get out and with all these loans.
Yeah. You think?
So it's like
you
we
think
talked
they are?
about before,
I don't think that they are going to do anything with forgiveness of student loans or anything like that. Though, do you?
Probably not. It doesn't make a lot of sense, really. Yeah.
And everybody who's ever went to law school is like, come on,
Yeah.
Bernie! All right, Bernie.
Well, these schools have these huge endowments.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these schools have millions and millions of dollars in these endowments. I was thinking recently what they should do is take the top 10% of students or top 25% of students and take the endowment money, and they could pay for maybe their tuition, because then you're incentivizing performance. Just a thought. But.
Yeah, I think I had read at Harvard's endowments
It's crazy,
so
right?
large
Yeah.
they could have their entire enrollment go to school for like 10 years.
Oh,
for
really?
free.
Is it that big?
I mean,
yeah,
it's
really-
I've seen some numbers, and they're huge. Yeah.
So
And
where
they're
does it go
supposed to
then?
spend that money.
Where does it go then?
Well, they just. I think we know where it goes.
Yeah, right.
I'm on a boat.
Well, I think they're investing and earning interest on it too. So
Yeah.
it's a double whammy.
Is really everything that we're always scratching our head about, all these little issues that you look at, does it really always come down to follow the money?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does.
I think it does. Yeah.
Somebody's always getting paid on something somewhere.
Yep.
If you can't figure out why something's happening,
Greed.
Yeah.
Greed.
somebody's getting paid somewhere. And
Greed can be a good thing. But
I noticed that a lot as an attorney. When you're looking at legislation, you always have to sort of think in the back of your mind, okay, so who's making money off of this, right?
Yeah.
Who's
Right.
getting paid off of this deal? And you have some that are a little more obvious, like the infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
On its face, it has to do with people getting paid. But then you have other things that have nothing to do with money or spending or anything like that.
Right.
But they have to do with people getting paid.
Yeah,
Eventually, in
yeah.
some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form, somebody's getting paid somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the same thing in the world of tax, if you will. It's all that whole one section of it's all lobbying. So somebody's getting paid through the whole thing,
Right.
whether it's mortgage people or solar or whatever it is. Somebody's
And
getting
it's
paid.
so complicated.
Yeah.
So complicated. to
Doesn't
understand.
Tesla make a ton of money on? And forget exactly what it's called.
Tesla
but-
makes a ton of money.
Well, the government gives them.
Oh, the credits.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you buy the car, you get a credit, tax credit.
guess.
Sure, incentives there.
Maybe-
Yeah.
incentives like that as far as the government trying to
Yeah.
push these electric
I guess 'cause
vehicles.
gives
That's
them
the
a-
lobbyist.
But that's how.
Yeah.
But that's how
That-
Tesla ultimately
yeah.
makes a lot of their money,
Sure,
right?
they get more sales out of it,
Indeed.
you know, and the consumer saves money because they get a tax break. So I guess on both sides of that equation, they get more gross sales.
But if the government's
Yeah.
not pushing that, do they still sell what they sell?
They might. I mean, it's such an
Yeah.
innovative product. It probably helps a little bit.
Or they even? I know.
I know some
now they're
people who
profitable,
bought
right?
Teslas
But for a while
because-
they weren't profitable selling cars.
That's right. That's right. Only
Correct,
more recently. Yeah.
That was just recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now
Yeah, he
they're-
tried to
they're
sell
headed in a
Tesla
direction.
to Apple, but Elon Musk's one condition was that he became the CEO of Apple.
Of Apple. Then he really didn't want to
Right,
sell it.
that's right,
He really
that's
didn't
right.
want to sell it. He
Yeah.
was just giving them the finger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, are there any companies that stand out to you that you say, hey, you know, I like that company. I think they do things really well. More local businesses.
Yeah,
Radio
yeah. I mean,
silence.
I kind of cater to that look. I seek them out
Yeah.
whenever I can, and I do make an effort to buy American-made type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
and I'll go out of my way to do it, and I know I'm paying more, when I do it.
That's good.
Yeah, but I like the concept of giving back, right?
Mhm.
I'd rather the dollar kind of come back right to my community
Mhm.
if I can, because eventually that'll swing back around to me or what have you.
Yeah,
So.
if
Makes it
everybody
a
did
better
that.
place to live, though, right?
If everybody
I'm
did
sorry?
that,
It makes
yeah.
it a better place to live. doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mhm.
And you're saying if everybody did that?
If everybody did it a little bit, I got rid
Yeah.
of my Amazon account a couple years ago because I kind of saw the direction it was headed and didn't like that. I don't patronize certain places like Starbucks. I got that from our friend Eric Petroni.
Yeah.
So
And support the Second Amendment.
right, yeah. Well, you have to vote with your dollars. You always say that at your seminars.
Absolutely.
Vote with your dollars, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly becoming
It's
more and more
becoming a lot
difficult,
Yeah,
right?
and it's a cultural shift, and I understand it.
I'm
and a
gonna
lot of
drink
people
tap
are,
water and
yeah, right.
No, it's,
But I have friends who are, they're who are real tight and they're raising kids, and a good friend of mine's a single dad, and he still goes to Walmart even though he knows he probably should go somewhere else. But when it's a choice between how much food you can put on the table for your children, it's a tough
Sure.
decision. So
Yeah.
yeah.
right.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like I always say, you have to look behind the product. So they're like, oh yeah, it's made in the USA, but then
Or
you look
assembled.
at where it's being shipped from or the
Yeah.
parts,
Yeah.
and
The
it's
logo
like
was
you
made in China.
start to find out a little bit more. And it's
It's like the
no.
Apple stuff. They trick you. It says assembled.
Assembled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put it
Yeah,
together in
assembled.
the USA.
Yeah, assembled in the USA.
But all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pieces were made.
Yeah, we put the last screw in.
Didn't we find like a made in USA website that was out of like a different
Oh
country?
yeah, we talked about that. Yeah,
yeah.
That was funny.
Yes.
yeah.
Oh my
Probably be a good
gosh.
business opportunity right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
that's
I
that's
just
probably
thought
true,
about
right?
that, Yeah.
Should do it.
Yeah.
Charge whatever you want.
So we've
Yeah.
got a Made in the USA company along with a Second Amendment credit union.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so this is the night where we become billionaires.
Right.
Not to mention with Amazon though, how many people do you think their spending habits, their personal finance habits have kind of gone off the rails with being able to buy something with the click of a button? Do you think that harms people?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think people are ending up in debt and not even realizing they
Yeah.
have the debt.
Oh.
It's a shame.
Sure. I remember when I had Prime. Yeah. I'd be
You
like,
see something, want it,
Yeah.
press it, comes to the door.
Then
right?
I get it in the
Yeah,
mail, and I'd be like,
yeah.
"Why did
And
I?"
every single business has followed suit. They know it, you
Yeah.
know, so they're all connecting
where they
to
do it.
Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever, Amazon Pay.
Just make it as easy as possible.
Easy as possible. That's
Yeah.
kind of the name of the game.
Super
It's
easy.
kind of that same thing with the subscriptions, that
Yes.
just an automatic
Oh
pull
my
out of my
gosh.
account.
Right.
Yeah, I forget about them.
People-
And the next thing you know, I'm
Yeah.
going through my account going, what is this?
There's a
I
service
haven't
that
watched
actually
Showtime in 3 years.
Yeah, I know. Right?
there's a service that actually goes through your account and pings all of those for you, and so you can remove them.
And
So
so
you
it
can-
shows what you're
so you
not
have to
using.
pay for something else. Yeah, it shows you all the things.
You
all
pay
the,
a subscription service,
and they
and then you
they
have to pay
remove
another
them.
subscription service to remove that subscription service.
They remove them for you.
So that's going to be our third business
That's
model,
right,
all right,
yeah.
guys? Our third business
Right.
is we're going to be the business.
Only $39.99 a month will save you $28. 100% money back guarantee.
It's gonna
We're going to go and cancel your subscription
But wait,
service
there's
that
more.
looks at your subscription services. So we're the third company down the line.
Right. Yeah, that's how crazy it is.
Man,
Yeah,
that's
it's
it. We're
crazy.
solving the world's problems here this evening.
Yeah.
right?
Well, I just want to say one thing. It's very
Cardano.
strange when you have to go through such a rigorous process to get a mortgage, but in order to sign up for these like $100,000 in student loans, you just
Sure.
oh yeah, come on over. They make it super easy. So
That is true.
and I think
Failed
all
high
the
school, you
kids-
don't have a GED?
I
No
didn't.
problem.
I saw somebody come up with that. Like, I think we need more people like you, like in the younger, like drilling in these concepts when they're younger,
Yeah.
so that you can make those decisions when you get to that point. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I mean, college is great, but
But I think
Sometimes.
colleges figured that part out too, which is
Yeah.
why the tuitions I think ballooned.
Right.
Because what's the difference? Right?
Yeah, well, they're just going to put it on a loan, and they're going to get the loan automatically. They'll have to deal with it later. So
Yeah.
there was no accountability.
I understand why these younger kids are upset.
How
Get
many
out of
people-
school And,
How many?
Yeah.
How many people do you think look at the college tuition, how high it is, and say, you know what, this is just too expensive of a prospect for me. I'm just not going to do it. Do you think there are people who legitimately take a look at it?
Well,
like that?
I'll tell you from my perspective. I have two girls, and I made them both the offer. I said, "You want a dump truck, or do you want a college education?" Because I think the value is still the same in the end. I
Yeah.
mean, having the client base that I have, I've seen people that haven't gone to school that are doing just as well.
Yeah.
So to your point, I think there are people that are looking at that. I'd have looked at it through an economic lens and said, well, $100,000 dump truck or $100,000 education.
Sure.
So,
plus, if you start saving, 4, 5, 6 years earlier, and using the rule of 72 to look
Yeah.
at the interest rate, you can see how often that'll double. But
you sure you don't want a job?
let's
He
talk.
knows his stuff, right? Hey, listen, we're all going to have jobs with our company
That's
that
right,
cancels
that's
the
right.
subscription service. So you think that some people are finally waking up to the fact that, hey, this history of fine arts degree is a scam sort of thing,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
people are getting all kinds of degrees.
Well, you
that-
know to buy Hunter's paintings now if you have those
Yeah.
degrees.
No, yeah, Biden paintings, right? Yeah.
You know what's good. You have a good
That's right,
eye.
that's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah. I'll buy that one.
Exactly. But you think that there are people who are waking up to it?
Yeah, I do. I don't know that the kid is, the 18 or 19-year-old is, but I think that their parents are starting to say, "Whoa, this is I could buy a house for the college education, and what am I getting out of it in the end?"
Right.
We hope we all want our children to succeed or what have you, but I think that doesn't mean the only way to succeed is going to school.
right.
There's a lot of other ways to go,
Yeah.
and I think also if you look at our economy in general, if you look at law from a job standpoint, we're always going to need plumbers.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
always going to
Absolutely,
need
right.
electricians.
We're always gonna
You
need
know,
one. That's for sure.
And you
Yeah, you
want
can't-
good ones too.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Russ
right.
needs a good plumber.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Judging by Russ's view from behind, he is a plumber. Could have fooled me. Maybe Russ is just being a plumber for Halloween. So, but for somebody like you, who's a professional, you have to have a specific degree in order to go into your field,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you really don't have a choice. If you want to be an attorney, you kind of got no
Yeah.
choice. But maybe people shouldn't rush into college for the sake of rushing into college.
No, I mean a gap year probably does make sense
Get
for,
some
for a
life
lot
experience.
of people. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think our kids still need some direction. I don't know that we need as much helicopter kind of parenting that goes on.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
I think
that's
that's
true.
a bigger problem than we really let on, if
Yeah.
you will.
Well, you see that when these kids get to school too, and they spend more time drinking or
Or
partying
maybe
than
like
actually learning,
Or learning how to fail. And
Yeah,
a lot of them
right.
don't know how to
Yeah.
fail because their parents took care of them
Good
all
point.
this time.
Sure.
You know, I'd rather them trip and fall when they're 6, 7, 8 than do it when they're 30.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's a
Right.
bigger
My
problem.
knees!
Or a good old community college. I think some of the people who
Sure.
are most successful went to community college. They made that good decision. But like they sell the colleges to you so much. Like, oh, I want to go to that
Talk
college.
about
or
that.
that
Think
one.
about that, though, right? You get your gen eds. I
Yeah.
played with a lot of guys who went
Yeah.
to junior
Smart.
college to play ball because they were just waiting to find their 4-year
Yeah.
school play at a higher level. But those guys, they really made out because for next to nothing, they got all their gen eds taken care of, and then they
Yeah.
still get that 4-year degree for the last
Yeah.
2 years,
That's
right?
exactly right.
I don't think a
yeah.
lot of people
Yeah.
realize that, at
Yeah,
least.
good
Yeah.
value in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess depending on what you want to do is going to dictate which direction you go.
But how many people really know what they want to do when they're 18 years
That's
old?
right.
I mean,
Sure.
and if you, a lot of people who think they know what they want to do, it doesn't end up being that,
Probably
right?
Mike
Yeah, right,
and
in
Chris.
the
That
end,
was
yeah.
about.
I wanted to be on the radio
You wanted to be
with Mike T.
I wanted to be on the radio on time.
Right, right.
He didn't even hear you.
Of course he did.
Don't worry, DG already got him.
Yeah, yeah.
She's been going after him.
CB's going to set up our live stream next time anyway, right, CB?
It says, what shoes are made in the USA? 100% brand USA, made in the USA shoes. I don't care if the pair of shoes costs $10,000. I will put in a case anyways. Interesting. We'll have to look into that. Gary says, Red Wing
Tendi.
shoes USA. There we
Nice,
go.
Gary.
Oh, all right.
There you go.
Get in there.
Hey now, Gary.
Hey now. Hey now.
Hey now.
Everybody check out Gary's channel. He has videos on space
DG
Force.
said define helicopter.
Space.
DG is our spark.
Ah,
she's
yes.
always starting these conversations. So she wants to know what define helicopter parenting. I get what you're saying. You know,
It's kind of when the,
I'll do the sound effects.
I thought that was Russ.
They hover over you, right?
Gary said, "Let's go, Russ." What are you doing?
So I have a definition here in case you guys wanted an actual definition.
Perfect. all
Helicopter
right.
parent?
Yeah, let us
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
A helicopter parent is a parent who pays extremely close attention to a child's or children's experiences and problems, particularly at educational institutions. Helicopter parents are so named because, like helicopters, they hover overhead, overseeing every aspect of their child's life constantly.
Thank you.
So the child never has to experience having a problem.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, like
Because
Chris said,
mommy's got it.
Yeah.
and then never had to fail.
But do you think that to some degree parents are almost devoting their attention to the wrong things? So you'll have people who are overly involved in something like that, but maybe not as involved in certain areas of life with the child as they should. Seems like a lot of times they don't want to deal with the more difficult stuff, right? That a lot of the more difficult conversations that have to be had
Right.
just don't end up taking place. And
Yeah.
the kid ends up getting raised by the phone these
Yeah,
days,
that's
right?
the
Or the
phone,
television
yeah.
or social media or whatever.
Or the government, right? The
The
schools,
government,
people,
right?
the parents
The
are really
gov-
pushing back.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where DG's going. She's like, I want to have control of my child. She's probably thinking that, but there's a time when it goes too far, and I think social media plays a part in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because the parents are so in your face. Look at me, look at my kid, and they're just passing that down to their kid.
Well, Facebook's new multiverse is going to have a
Metaverse.
child care service.
It's meta.
Meta, sorry.
You put
Metaverse, yeah, Meta.
Put your virtual
Thank you,
kids
yeah.
in the
Right,
virtual
that's right,
daycare.
that's right. Yeah. Just throw the goggles on and you can leave them at home.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's crazy.
That's what's coming.
Yeah.
DG says not true. Not. I don't know why she says not true. DG, can you elaborate on
What's
that?
not true?
She's like, no,
I don't know. I guess the definition of helicopter parent.
But Russ, you just skipped what she said before that.
Oh,
Read it out loud, Russ.
you're gonna make me do this.
Okay, no, I won't.
You're gonna make me do this.
DG says Russ, the person who lives in his mom's basement. No, he does not live in his mom's basement. He lives in his grandma's garage. For your information.
He lives at the
big
North
difference.
Pole. Hey, he's saving
For
some
your
dollars, all
information.
right?
That's right.
Hey,
that's
he's
right.
saving some dollars. Leave him alone.
It's a financial decision. That's all.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Russ has been dollar cost averaging since he was like 5.
Poor Rob. Okay.
Yeah, but the government does seem to have some kind of an interest in stepping in and raising the children to some degree, right? I mean, we were talking about a couple of weeks ago this teacher who is getting ready to retire in a few years and can't believe the kinds of things they're seeing, to the extent that they were told at the school that if the child decides they want to identify as one gender as opposed to the other, you are not allowed to tell the parent that the child did that. And I'm not getting into the merits of anything like that. What I'm saying is that what they're saying by saying that is they've made the decision that they know better for your kid than the parent. Because the parent shouldn't be allowed, because that could be dangerous to the kid for whatever reason. It would be in the kid's worst interest if the parent knew about it.
Yeah.
It seems like we resolved that in Virginia last week, didn't we?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so, right?
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Right. Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
it was who's that Democrat comedian on HBO? The Democrat comedian who does the stand-ups, Bill Maher.
Bill Maher.
Oh, Bill Maher, yeah.
I think he said something about. He said, "I want." He said, "I want the Democrats to learn critical race theory, and that it's critical to win races." So he was getting on his own party for what took place down there. But yeah, I guess that's a good point. Is that ultimately the people had to get in there and vote these people out in order to resolve that, but. They're definitely pushing for it.
Yeah.
They're definitely pushing for the idea that the government knows what's better for the kids than the parents do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we as the people have to step up and say nah, and we can do it. I mean, that was the point was made.
Right.
The question is will that carry? Memories are short, so what's going to happen in next year.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't think that we're going to see other places with leftists throughout the rest of the country straighten up and pay attention because of that. I think that they've become more brazen over the last few years. Right? I'd be red wave if that happened. Yeah. Jeremy says, can our kiddos football team get a shout out? Southern Columbia area youth football, Little Tigers, have their championship game this Sunday against Selinsgrove. Wish us luck. Well, I'll tell you what, Southern Columbia area youth football, Little Tigers. Go Little Tigers. I want you to go out there this championship game, and I want you to run up the score on them. I want you to go out there, play the best game you could possibly play, bring it to Selinsgrove, and bring home that title. Otherwise, I don't want to see you ever again.
There we go.
Get out there and give them heck, right? If they're youth football, I don't want to say the other age.
Little Tigers.
Can we say heck? I haven't been around little kids. Little Tigers, hey now.
Hey now.
Go get it. Maybe I'll make, Jeremy, maybe you've emailed the program in the past. Maybe I'll make a video, send it over to you, and you can show it to the.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
show
do
it
a
to
little
the
video
players.
for 'em.
Appreciate that. Youth,
That's a good idea.
Youth sports, it's always good. In sports, I've found, does provide certain life lessons that you don't get elsewhere. A lot of people say, well, only certain small percentage of people who play even college sports go on to play professional sports. Well, yeah, that's true. But while you're a collegiate athlete, you're learning things about yourself, traits like discipline and things of that nature that you might not otherwise learn if you just a regular
I have
student.
a whole room full of participation trophies.
Maybe that's a problem.
Right.
And that's a problem.
That's
yeah.
a problem.
But
Yeah.
I think learning how to play as a team,
Well, you see a lot of people end up in leadership positions
Yeah.
and are very successful who, were highly involved in athletics like yourself.
He's like
Playing as a team is
Yeah.
certainly one of them, right? Discipline, staying
Discipline.
involved. Yeah, you got to keep your body in shape.
Right.
You got to work out. You've got to you got to eat right. There's a lot of things that you got to do.
Can't give up. Yep.
You got to be at practice every it's every day for
Sure.
you're a serious collegiate athlete.
Yeah.
You're doing something. Other people are hanging out playing video games.
Yeah.
You're over
Yeah.
there at practice, or you're on the road somewhere. So
Right
I
on.
think that there are a lot of things that you learn.
I agree.
Yeah.
It says, Mike G, exactly. Government has been doing this for a long time. I would rather be the pilot of the helicopter than let Joe Biden or AOC take control.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So last thing I kind of want to touch on here. Today was Veterans Day. Very thankful for everybody who served. It's very important. we wouldn't be able to be here exercising our First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. And this may very well be pulled down from the internet, Chris. I just want to give you fair
Probably
warning
has been
about
already.
that.
Yeah.
We've got this track record of having. We have had things pulled down on occasion.
Yeah.
We've had our battles with YouTube and appeals and
good
things like
Luckily,
that.
we have a resident lawyer to
Yeah,
help us
right.
with those things. Yeah.
So, but I do want to say a special thank you from the Mike G in the Morning program and the Mike G in the Morning family to all of our veterans. I know we've got veterans who are listening. Jeremy, who just made a comment, I know he's a veteran from previous comments he's made on the message board. Chris, do you have anything you want to say about Veterans Day?
I think it's an opportune time to recognize our good friend Eric Petroni for his time in the Marines and anybody else out there who's spent time in the military. Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your service.
Rest in peace, Eric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have any veterans in your life, Chris, that you come across, whether it's professionally or personally?
Oh yeah, yes, several veterans, whether both professionally and through the family. So we always thank them for their service, and in some cases gave the ultimate sacrifice.
We got Russ who wants to thank a veteran.
Yes, well, we actually have an entire program dedicated to veterans and those who care about veterans on our station. It's called Veterans Voice, and there are many years of podcasts going back. So if you wanted to hear a podcast that's an hour long just with veterans talking to veterans.
That may be, and I may be wrong, but that may have been the first appearance I made on 1180 AM was on the Veterans Voice.
Oh, okay.
Many years ago.
My
Go back
memory
and check
doesn't go
I
back
was a
that
guest
far.
on. I think the first two times I appeared, one was Veterans Voice, one was New Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the first one was Veterans Voice. If I'm not
Whoever
mistaken.
writes in next week with that date gets one of Mike's.
Oh
books.
yeah, I'll
Gonna
get you
give
an
away one of your
autograph
books. Yeah, there you go.
headshot. Right? Yeah,
There we go.
autograph book. There we
Autograph
go.
book from Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, go check that out. Go to our website, click on podcast, click on Vet's Voice, and you can hear all the programs that we've produced for, I don't know, probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Rita says, my father, 2 brothers, and husband were veterans. Well, we thank them very much for their service. Liberty, your pops is a veteran, no?
Yeah, he's a
Vietnam.
veteran. Shout out to all the veterans, and thank you so much for your service. And I know a lot of people are experiencing anxiety right now with COVID and things going on. And I just think one thing he always taught me, or just even just seeing his story, was just no matter what you're going through, imagine yourself being picked for service, drafted, and then sticking on a plane, not knowing where you're going, dropped in the middle of Vietnam or some foreign land, and then compare it to what you're going through.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
good
seriously.
point, good point.
Because I know people who are scared to fly,
Yeah.
period.
People are
Right?
afraid to
You're going
fly.
on a plane to Disney World, and these people are freaking out, holding on to the arms of the chair with their knuckles
And you're
turning
going to a
white.
beautiful hotel.
And then you got these
Right.
18-year-old kids who were selected. They didn't choose to do this.
Yeah.
And they get thrown on this plane. It's like,
Yeah.
well, if you thought the plane ride was bad, wait till you see where we're going.
We're not even landing. You
It
get to
is-
jump out.
It's it's not Disney World. You're close. Not Disney World.
Right.
Not Disney World. Good guess, but actually no.
And then you go there, and you just, I always remember him going to the Vietnam Wall and like really, really just wanting to go there and honor his friends who had passed and things. And somebody was on today, I don't know, I think it had to do with Virginia, one of the, who was the guy who was elected down there? Somebody that he was working with. But anyway, she was a veteran and she was talking about it. And she was describing such detail the things that she saw or that her colleagues had seen. You know, I mean, not to be graphic, but people blown to pieces. Like, I mean, these are things these people see, and this is why we honor them, because they've seen things that we could never even imagine.
Sure.
So the reality of it, I just like to think of it on this day, like, you know, we want to honor them, and it sounds great, but really think about some of the things they went through and give them some compassion and hire them and pass that on through the families and just really give them that respect. So thanks,
That's true.
veterans.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more veteran-owned businesses. I love
yeah.
seeing stuff like that. That's another thing. You know, it's one thing to buy American and buy local. If you got a veteran-owned business, that's even better, right?
It is,
Isn't
yeah.
that great? And hopefully they have the opportunity to thrive, and because we appreciate everything that they've done. Yeah, shout out to my brother Kevin, and Dominic Leon.
Yeah, there you go.
Dominic Leon,
Dominic, yeah.
former guest of the program. So
And
lots
all the
of
service dogs.
and all the
Yeah,
service dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully they all made it home nice
Including
and
the
safe, right?
contracting dogs. Were
Yeah, even they were like, that fact check, those were not service dogs. They were just contractors.
Yeah.
They were 1099 dogs.
they were 1099.
Yeah.
Watch out while you're
They
contracting.
were an employee dogs. They're 1099, so it's fake
Sounds-
news.
Sounds like Dr. Fauci talking. You
Did
know?
that press secretary like disappear or something like that?
Oh yeah.
Is she back?
Jen, she had COVID.
She's still gone, I think, right? Yeah, she has COVID, I believe.
Isn't
I heard something that she may have had her booster, but I don't know if that's the case or not. So we don't know for sure. But well, yeah,
That's
sounds
just
like there's
totally
more.
wild.
Yeah,
It's just
some-
like
yeah.
that totally disappeared.
Maybe
right?
she's not doing well. Yeah.
We gotta get that "We're in the World" is Carmen San Diego theme song going. Right?
And we wish her well, even though we don't agree
Yeah,
politically
no,
with her.
of course.
Obviously, you know.
Of course, nobody
Yeah.
wants her to be hurt. It's just that
Yeah,
person in the
right,
chat.
right.
wishing you what was going on.
Yeah,
Read what
yeah,
they said.
Absolutely. Just to clarify, not that you were saying that. Yeah.
You guys know those microphones pick up stuff, right?
Hot mics.
When
hot
you
mics.
talk into this thing, it goes on the air.
Yeah,
That's what
right,
they're
right.
for.
Liberty keeps on telling me to leave the mic on, and I'm like, fine, whatever. then she
She
just
talks to you right into the mic.
right into the mic.
Hey, Russ, here's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Here's my social security number.
Except
No,
for the
I
100,000
was-
people listening over the airwaves.
can you talk
about this on the
I'll say it.
Except for the greater Philadelphia area, some parts of Delaware and New Jersey.
There's a new person in the chat, and I was just curious who they were.
The Hurricane 999.
Yeah, yeah.
It says this is a random chat algorithm live, not lots of people. Under the radar? I don't know, but I speak freely here.
Well, thank you for speaking freely.
Are you a bot? Is that what they're trying to say? Yeah. Ain't on.
I'm a bot, but I have freedoms.
That's right.
I can say whatever I want in this chat.
Right. Anonymous is coming out with a cryptocurrency, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll be great.
Yeah.
Anonymous coin.
Not recommending it or anything, but
Not as
just an announcement they made.
Good deal.
So, yeah.
Last thing, I gotta ask Chris about this. Have you heard of these NFTs? Non-fungible
non-fungible
tokens.
Yeah.
So basically, it's something electronic, and people buy them, and there have been certain NFTs that have exploded in value. Like I had a guy tell me he bought a cartoon monkey for like $1,500, and you think of that, it's like, wow,
It's like
crazy.
artwork that's digital.
And-
it's almost like a
and
crypto,
sold it
but
sold
artwork.
it for like $50,000.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still trying
There's
to
some
figure it
videos
out.
on YouTube about it.
Yeah. Maybe for our next episode with Chris Ruggiero, he's going to come back and talk about why you should invest in cartoon monkeys.
Right.
I think that's a good place to cut it off,
Yeah,
right?
sounds
All right,
good.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Ah,
Excellent
great, yeah.
conversation. See, I told you we'd have fun, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
told you you had fun.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Great guest. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Philadelphia. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.